Welcome to Wife Cheating Story. I hope you have an enjoyable and relaxing time listening. Let's get started.
Before we begin, let me know where you're tuning in from down in the comments. And if you enjoy this story, don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss our next tale. The Santa Fe Opera House glittered like a jewel against the purple twilight of the Sangre de Cristo Mountains. Inside, crystal chandeliers cast dancing shadows across the faces of New Mexico's elite, their laughter mixing with the clink of champagne flutes. Brandon Chen stood at the edge of the crowd, nursing a scotch he didn't really want, wondering why he'd let his business partner drag him to another charity gala. Then he saw her. Jacqueline moved through the room like liquid silk, her emerald dress catching the light with every step. She wasn't the most beautiful woman there, but something about the way she tilted her head when she laughed, the way her fingers traced the rim of her wine glass, made Brandon forget every line of code he'd ever written. See something you like? Lucas nudged him, following his gaze. Who is she? Jacqueline Martinez. Works for the Children's Hospital Foundation. Way out of your league, buddy. Brandon smiled. We'll see about that. Their introduction was a comedy of errors. Brandon, usually so confident in boardrooms, stumbled over his words. Jacqueline's eyes sparkled with amusement as he rambled about server architecture when she'd simply asked what he did for a living. I'm sorry, he finally said, running a hand through his dark hair. I'm usually better at this. At what? Talking to women or explaining cloud computing at charity galas? Both, apparently. She laughed then, really laughed, and Brandon knew he was lost. 6 months later, he proposed in a hot air balloon floating over the Sandia Mountains at sunrise. The pilot later told people it was the only time in 20 years he'd seen a passenger nearly drop the ring over the basket's edge from nervous hands. You know, Jacqueline said, tears streaming down her face as she said yes. Most tech guys would have programmed some elaborate proposal app. I considered it, Brandon admitted, sliding the ring onto her finger. But some moments deserve to be analog. They built their life together like they were writing code one line at a time, debugging as they went. Their first apartment was a cramped 2-bedroom in downtown Albuquerque, the second bedroom crammed with servers and whiteboards covered in Brandon's illegible scrawl. Jacqueline would bring him coffee at 3 a.m., finding him hunched over his laptop, trying to solve problems that would eventually make them millionaires. You need sleep, she'd say, massaging his shoulders. Just 1 more hour. I'm close to cracking this. You said that 4 hours ago. But she'd stay with him, reading grant proposals for the foundation while he coded, their silence comfortable and companionable. When his first startup sold for 8 figures, Jacqueline was the one who found their dream home in the foothills, an Adobe-style house with views that stretched all the way to the volcanoes. It's too much, Brandon had protested, even though he was already imagining his home office in the sun-drenched study. It's perfect, Jacqueline corrected. We've earned this. For years, it was. They hosted dinner parties on the wraparound portal, the sunset painting the mountains pink and gold while their guests sipped wine from their growing collection. Jacqueline left the foundation to help Brandon with his new venture, her warmth and social skills the perfect complement to his technical brilliance. But success has a way of changing people, like water slowly eroding stone. Brandon noticed it first in small things, the designer bags that appeared with increasing frequency, the subtle eye roll when he suggested hiking in the Bosque instead of flying to Aspen for the weekend, the way she'd scroll through Instagram during their conversations, double-tapping photos of friends' European vacations and yacht parties. We should go to Mykonos this summer, she announced one evening, showing him a feed full of infinity pools and whitewashed villas. I can't. The product launch is in June. There's always a product launch, Brandon. That's how we afford Mykonos, Jackie. She'd bristled at the nickname she used to love. Don't be condescending, I know how we afford things. I was there, remember? In that awful apartment watching you live on ramen and Red Bull. I didn't mean, I'm going to Rebecca's gallery opening. Don't wait up. The door closing behind her sounded like the end of a conversation they'd never quite started. Brandon tried to bridge the growing distance. He surprised her with weekend trips to Napa, bought her the Tesla she'd been eyeing, even attempted to share her newfound interest in the charity circuit. But at every event, he felt more like an accessory than a husband that tacked money behind Jacqueline's social ambitions. "You could at least pretend to enjoy yourself," she hissed at him during a particularly tedious fundraiser at La Posada. "I donated $50,000. Isn't that enjoyment enough?" God, when did you become so transactional? When did you? He wanted to ask, but didn't. Instead, he watched her work the room, air-kissing women whose names she'd gossip about later, laughing too loud at men's jokes that weren't funny. This polished stranger wearing his wife's face. The night he knew their dream had curdled into something else, they were standing on their portal. The lights of Albuquerque spread below them like scattered diamonds. Jacqueline was describing some committee she'd joined, her words floating past him like smoke. "Are you even listening?" she demanded. "I'm sorry. Long day debugging. It's always a long day with you. Always some crisis, some code, some meeting." She drained her wine glass, her fourth of the evening. "Do you remember when we used to talk about things besides your company? Do you remember when we used to talk at all?" The words escaped before he could stop them. She stared at him, her face unreadable in the darkness. "I'm going to bed." Brandon stayed on the portal until the desert cold drove him inside, wondering when the woman who'd once brought him coffee at 3 a.m. had become someone who couldn't stand the sight of him at 9 p.m. The servers in his home office hummed their electronic lullaby, but for the first time in his life, Brandon Chen couldn't solve the problem in front of him. He didn't know that across town, in a penthouse suite at the Four Seasons, his wife was already learning to speak another man's name in the dark. The lies began with surprising elegance, like malware designed by a master programmer. Jacqueline had always been good with details. It's what made her excellent at grant writing, at remembering the names of donors' children and their allergies. Now she applied that same meticulous attention to deception. "The Heritage Foundation is forming a new committee for arts education," she announced over breakfast one Tuesday morning in March. The spring sun slanted through their kitchen windows, illuminating the dust motes that danced between them. "They want me to chair it." Brandon looked up from his tablet, quarterly reports forgotten. "That's great, Jackie. You always said the arts programs needed more funding. The meetings are at La Posada." "Every Thursday evening." She buttered her toast with practiced nonchalance. "They might run late. You know how these society women love to talk." "Society women? I thought you said this was about arts education." She laughed, but it sounded like breaking glass. "Everything in this town is about society, darling. You should know that by now." He should have paid attention to the way she wouldn't meet his eyes, the way her fingers drummed against the granite countertop. But Brandon had a conference call with Tokyo in 20 minutes, and his mind was already solving problems half a world away. The first Thursday, she came home smelling like expensive perfume and red wine, chattering about curriculum proposals and donation targets. The second Thursday, she was quieter, distracted. By the third, she'd stopped talking about the meetings altogether. "How was the committee?" Brandon asked one night, finding her in their bedroom at midnight, carefully hanging up a dress he didn't recognize. "Fine." She disappeared into the walk-in closet. "Productive. That's a beautiful dress. Is it new?" A pause. Then, "Oh, this? Rebecca gave it to me. She ordered the wrong size from Neiman's. Lucky we're the same size." Rebecca Thornton was a size 2 on her best day. Jacqueline was a size 6. Brandon said nothing, but the lie sat between them like a third person in the room. The designer wardrobe expanded like a virus replicating. Valentino, Chanel, Louboutin, always with an explanation that crumbled under the slightest scrutiny. Gift from a grateful donor. Sample sale Rebecca couldn't attend. Charity auction win she'd forgotten to mention. "Since when do charities auction off brand new Hermes bags?" Lucas asked during their monthly poker game, held in Brandon's study while Jacqueline attended another meeting. "Since my wife decided she needed them," Brandon replied, folding a winning hand out of sheer distraction. "You okay, man?" "Define okay." Lucas studied him with the sharp eyes that made him New Mexico's best private investigator. "You know, if you ever need—" "I know." Brandon shuffled the cards. "Deal again." The text messages started soon after. Jacqueline's phone, once casually left on counters and coffee tables, became a permanent extension of her hand. It buzzed with the frequency of a heartbeat, and she'd snatch it up like it contained state secrets. One evening, Brandon came home early from the office, hoping to surprise her with dinner from their favorite Thai place. He found her on the couch, typing furiously, a smile playing at her lips that he hadn't seen directed at him in months. "Hey," he said. She jumped like she'd been electrocuted, the phone clattering to the floor. "Jesus, Brandon, you scared me." "Sorry, I brought pad thai. I already ate. At the meeting." She scrambled for her phone, checking the screen for cracks with more concern than she'd shown for their marriage in months. "It's Wednesday." "What? You said the meetings were on Thursdays." For a moment, her mask slipped, and he saw something flicker in her eyes. Panic? Guilt? But she recovered quickly, always did. "Special session. Planning the gala." She stood, smoothing her skirt. "I'm going to shower." Brandon ate alone, the Thai food cooling on the coffee table while his marriage froze to death in the spaces between their words. The cologne was what finally made the crack a chasm. Brandon knew since he'd worn the same Calvin Klein fragrance since college, a habit Jacqueline used to tease him about. "My predictable programmer," she'd say, buying him the same bottle every Christmas. So when she came home one night trailing clouds of something that definitely wasn't his, something expensive and assertive, with notes of amber and wood, every synapse in his brain fired alarm signals. "New perfume?" he asked carefully. She was already heading upstairs, her heels clicking against the Saltillo tiles. "You smell different." She paused at the landing, not turning around. "Oh, Rebecca sprayed me with something at Saks. You know how aggressive those perfume people are?" Right. But Brandon knew Saks closed at 9, and it was nearly midnight. He sat in his study until dawn, staring at code that might as well have been hieroglyphics, breathing in the ghost of another man's scent that lingered in his home like evidence of a crime he couldn't quite name. The name came 2 weeks later, dropped as casually as a bomb in conversation. "Christian thinks the arts program should focus on contemporary installations," Jacqueline mentioned over Sunday brunch at their kitchen island. "He has some fascinating ideas about immersive experiences." "Christian?" "Christian Blackwood. He's on the committee." She spread organic apricot jam on her croissant with surgical precision. "Actually, he's in venture capital. You two might have a lot to talk about." Brandon's stomach clenched. He knew that name. Everyone in Southwest Tech knew Christian Blackwood. Tall, silver-haired, with the kind of old Santa Fe money that built museums and named hospital wings. Also known for cycling through wives like startup investments. "Interesting," Brandon managed. "How long has he been involved with the charity?" "Oh, he just joined. But he's already making such an impact. So many fresh ideas." Her eyes brightened in a way they hadn't for Brandon's ideas in years. "He really understands the importance of supporting local artists." "I'm sure he does." Jacqueline either missed his tone or chose to ignore it. "You should meet him. I mentioned your AI project, and he seemed very interested." "Did you?" Brandon's coffee tasted like ash. "What exactly did you tell him?" "Just general things. Don't worry, I didn't reveal any of your precious trade secrets." She laughed, but it was brittle. "I do know how to be discreet, Brandon." "Do you?" He wondered, watching her clear their plates with movements too quick, too eager to end the conversation. Her phone buzzed on the counter, and she glanced at it, a small smile ghosting across her lips before she caught herself. "Committee business," she said unnecessarily. "On a Sunday? Art doesn't take weekends off." She kissed his cheek, a brief, obligatory brush of lips. "I'm going to the gym." Brandon sat alone in their sun-drenched kitchen, surrounded by all the trappings of their success: the Sub-Zero refrigerator, the La Cornue range Jacqueline had insisted they needed, the view of mountains that had once seemed full of promise. His phone contained the contacts of hundreds of investors, innovators, people who hung on his every word about the future of technology. But he couldn't decode the algorithm of his own wife's heart, couldn't debug the errors cascading through their marriage. The name echoed in the silence. Christian, Christian, Christian. Outside, a roadrunner darted across their xeriscaped yard, disappearing into the sage. Brandon watched it go, envying its simple purpose, its unambiguous direction. In his pocket, his own phone buzzed with emails, updates, requests for his attention. He ignored them all, sitting in the kitchen that had once been the heart of their home, now just another room in a house full of elegant lies. The crack in their foundation was widening. Soon the whole structure would come crashing down. The credit card statement arrived on a Tuesday that felt like any other Tuesday until it wasn't. Brandon had set up digital statements years ago, but Jacqueline insisted on paper copies. "I like to see where our money goes," she'd said, back when "our" still meant something. He found the envelope in his home office, mixed in with tech magazines and conference invitations. The charge jumped off the page like a rattlesnake in the desert. Gruett Winery Private Event, $8,000. Brandon stared at the number until it blurred. $8,000 at Gruett for a committee celebration he'd heard nothing about. He called Jacqueline, straight to voicemail. "Hey, it's me. Quick question about a credit card charge. Call me back." She didn't call back. Instead, she texted 2 hours later. "In meeting." "What charge?" "Gruett Winery. $8,000. A longer pause. Then, "Committee celebration for reaching fundraising goal. Sorry, should have mentioned. Big success for the arts program." Brandon looked at the emoji like it was written in a foreign language. Since when did Jacqueline use celebration emojis for spending $8,000? Emily knocked on his office door. "Brandon? Your 2 o'clock is here?" "Cancel it." "But it's the Jensen Group." "Cancel it, Em." She studied him with those sharp hazel eyes that missed nothing. Emily had been with him for 5 years, had seen him through acquisitions and hostile takeovers without breaking a sweat. The concern on her face now made him realize how badly he was holding it together. "Is everything all right?" "Fine," he lied. "Just need to handle something." After she left, Brandon did something he'd never done before. He called Gruett directly. "I'm calling about a private event charged to my card last Thursday. $8,000. Can you tell me more about it?" "One moment, sir." Keys clicking. "Ah, yes, the Blackwood reservation. Stunning evening. The 2015 Blanc de Noir was a particular hit." "The Blackwood reservation?" "Yes, sir. Mr. Blackwood specifically requested our private tasting room. 20 guests, if I recall correctly. Would you like me to email you the invoice?" No, that's fine. Thank you." Brandon hung up and sat in the silence of his office, listening to the hum of servers that suddenly seemed to be speaking in code he couldn't crack. The Blackwood reservation. Not the Heritage Foundation, not the Arts Committee. Blackwood. 3 days later, Lucas called him at 6 a.m. "Hey, you asked me to keep an eye out if I saw Jackie's car anywhere unusual." Brandon's stomach dropped. "Where?" "Four Seasons. Valet just parked her Mercedes. Maybe she's meeting someone for breakfast." "Brandon." Lucas's voice was gentle. "It's 6 in the morning, and she told you she was at yoga, right?" Brandon looked at the empty space beside him in bed, the sheets still warm from where Jacqueline had slipped out 40 minutes ago. "Yeah. 7 a.m. class at the studio on Montgomery. The studio that's 15 miles from the Four Seasons? Yeah. Want me to?" "No, thanks, Lucas. I appreciate it." But Lucas, being Lucas, texted him an hour later. She just left. With a tall guy, silver hair. They seemed friendly. Brandon threw his phone across the room. It hit the wall and fell behind the dresser, buzzing with messages he didn't want to read. That afternoon, Emily came into his office without knocking a liberty she rarely took. "We need to talk," she said, closing the door behind her. "If it's about the Jensen meeting..." "It's not." She sat down, smoothing her pencil skirt. "I saw Jacqueline yesterday, at Tiffany's in La Encantada." Brandon's chest tightened. "Shopping isn't a crime, Em. She wasn't alone." Emily's voice was careful, like she was diffusing a bomb. "She was with a man, tall, distinguished, silver hair. They were looking at watches. Maybe it was for the charity auction." "Brandon?" "What do you want me to say, Em?" His voice cracked. "That my wife is shopping for watches with another man? That she's lying about yoga? That she spent $8,000 on wine for his party?" "I want you to protect yourself," Emily said quietly. "You're brilliant at anticipating market shifts, at seeing patterns in data. Maybe it's time to apply those skills closer to home. After she left, Brandon pulled up their joint credit card statements going back 3 months. The patterns emerged like a damning algorithm. La Posada Resort. $500 lunch charges on days Jacqueline claimed to be at committee meetings Neiman Marcus. $3,000 here, $4,500 there, always just under the limit that would trigger his automatic alerts. The Compound Restaurant. Intimate dinners for two when Brandon was supposedly included in group fundraising meetings. Hotel Valencia. Bar charges at 2 p.m. on a Wednesday, and then, like a sucker punch to the solar plexus, a charge from 2 days ago that Jacqueline hadn't mentioned. Cartier, $15,000. Brandon's hands shook as he called the store. I'm calling about a recent purchase on my card. $15,000. Ah, yes, the Panthère de Cartier bracelet. Exquisite choice. The gentleman was very particular about the sizing. The gentleman? Yes, Mr. Blackwood wanted to ensure it would fit perfectly. He mentioned it was for a very special occasion. Did he? Would you like the gift wrapping details? We can certainly. Brandon hung up. He walked to their bedroom, to Jacqueline's jewelry armoire, a custom piece he'd commissioned for their 10th anniversary. There, nestled between her grandmother's pearls and the diamond earrings he'd given her last Christmas, sat a bracelet he'd never seen before. Cartier. Panthère collection. The gold gleamed like gilt in the afternoon light. That night Jacqueline came home humming, actually humming, like a woman with delicious secrets. She kissed his cheek in the kitchen, smelling like La Mer moisturizer and lies. Good day? She asked, pouring herself wine. The usual. You? Oh, you know, committee stuff. She played with her sleeve and Brandon caught a glimpse of gold at her wrist. Actually, something fun happened. I won a bracelet in the committee raffle. Can you believe it? I never win anything. Brandon looked at his wife, really looked at her. The careful makeup that had taken an hour instead of her usual 15 minutes. The way she kept touching her wrist, like she was reassuring herself the bracelet was real. The light in her eyes that used to be reserved for him. That's quite a prize for a committee raffle, he said carefully. I know, right? Christian donated it. He's so generous with the program. Christian donated a $15,000 bracelet to a committee raffle? Something flickered in her eyes. How did you know it was $15,000? The air between them crackled with unspoken accusations. Brandon could have lied, could have deflected, could have kept playing this elaborate game of pretend. Instead, he just looked at her and said, "Lucky guess." They stood in their beautiful kitchen, in their perfect house, with their enviable life spread around them like props in a play that had run too long. Jacqueline's hand went to the bracelet again, protective, possessive. I'm tired, she said finally. I'm going to bed. It's 7:30. I said I'm tired, Brandon. She left him there with her half-drunk wine and whole lies. Brandon stood at the window, watching the sunset paint the Sandias red as blood. Somewhere in the city below, Christian Blackwood was probably pouring himself a scotch, congratulating himself on his conquest. Somewhere the truth was spreading like a virus through the code of their marriage. His phone buzzed. Lucas again. You okay? Brandon typed back. No. Want to talk about it? Not yet. But soon. I'm here when you're ready. Brandon deleted the conversation and poured the rest of Jacqueline's wine down the sink. The Cartier bracelet might as well have been a shackle, binding his wife to another man with links of gold and deception. But every chain could be broken. Every code could be hacked. He just needed to decide if the marriage was still worth debugging, or if it was time to shut down the whole system. Their 15th anniversary fell on a Friday in April, when the desert was caught between the last gasps of winter and the first breath of summer. Brandon had made reservations at Geronimo, the same restaurant where they'd had their first official date. He'd even requested the same corner table, though he wondered if the gesture was romance or masochism. Jacqueline emerged from their bedroom wearing a black cocktail dress he didn't recognize, but then he didn't recognize much about her lately. The Cartier bracelet caught the light as she adjusted her earrings. You look beautiful, he said, because it was true, and because he didn't know what else to say anymore. Thank you. She barely glanced at him. Are you wearing that? Brandon looked down at his charcoal suit, the one she used to say made him look like a CEO who could also fix his own servers. Should I change? No, it's fine. Let's go. The drive to Santa Fe was 45 minutes of NPR filling the silence. Jacqueline spent most of it on her phone, the screen's glow illuminating her face in the gathering dusk. Every buzz made her smile, tiny private smiles that used to belong to him. Busy night for the committee? He asked as they wound through the turquoise trail. What? Oh, yes, final gala preparations. She typed something quickly, then forced the phone into her purse. Sorry, I'll put it away. But her hand kept drifting to her bag, like an addict checking for their fix. Geronimo was exactly as Brandon remembered, intimate, candlelit, with the kind of aggressive romanticism that now felt like a rebuke. Their corner table was waiting, the same table where Jacqueline had once laughed so hard at his binary code joke that she'd snorted wine through her nose. Remember, he started. The wine incident, she finished, and for a moment her smile was real. God, I was mortified. You were adorable. I was a mess. My mess, he said softly. Something shifted in her face, a tectonic movement of emotion he couldn't quite read. Then her phone buzzed and the moment shattered. I'm sorry, I just need to... She was already reaching for it. Jackie, it might be important. More important than our anniversary? She froze, phone halfway out of her purse. That's not fair. Isn't it? The waiter appeared, a blessed interruption. They ordered she got the duck, he got the rack of lamb, both of them got wine they'd drink too fast. When they were alone again, Jacqueline had put her phone away, but her fingers drummed against the table where it should have been. Tell me about the AI project, she said, clearly grasping for safe ground. So he did, falling into the familiar rhythm of explaining neural networks and machine learning, watching her nod in all the right places while her eyes tracked the other diners. She was there but not there, present but absent, his wife but a stranger. Christian would find this fascinating, she said when he paused. He's very interested in AI applications for his portfolio companies. Brandon's hand tightened on his wine glass. You talked to Christian about my work? Just in general terms. He's very knowledgeable about tech. I'm sure he is. What's that supposed to mean? Nothing. Just that Christian Blackwood seems to be very involved in all aspects of your life lately. The words hung between them like a gauntlet thrown. Jacqueline's cheeks flushed, but her voice remained steady. He's a friend, Brandon. A colleague on the committee. Am I not allowed to have friends? Friends don't usually buy each other $15,000 bracelets. Her hand went instinctively to her wrist. I told you I won that in a raffle, right? And the $8,000 at Gruett? Was that a raffle too? You've been checking up on me? Her voice rose slightly. The couple at the next table glanced over. I saw the credit card statement. It's my account too, remember? Our account, our money, which I've helped earn in case you've forgotten. By lying about committee meetings? By having lunch at the Four Seasons when you're supposedly at yoga? Jacqueline went very still. Have you been having me followed? I don't need to have you followed. You're not as discreet as you think you are. Their entrees arrived, beautiful and untouched. The lamb looked like it had been plated for a magazine, but Brandon had lost his appetite somewhere between the wine and the truth. I don't know what you think is happening, Jacqueline said quietly, cutting into her duck with surgical precision. But you're wrong. Am I? Then look me in the eye and tell me you were at yoga last Tuesday morning. She looked up, met his gaze for a full second, then looked away. This duck is overcooked. Jackie, don't call me that. Her voice was sharp now, brittle. I hate when you call me that. You used to love it. I used to love a lot of things. The words landed like a slap. Brandon signaled for the check, their anniversary dinner decomposing between them like something that had died of neglect. The drive home was worse than the drive there. No NPR this time, just the sound of tires on asphalt and the weight of everything unsaid. Jacqueline pressed herself against the passenger door like she was trying to escape through it. As they pulled into their driveway, she finally spoke. Christian wants to meet you. What? He's interested in potentially investing in your company. I thought you'd be excited. Brandon laughed, but there was no humor in it. You want me to take money from your... He stopped himself. From my what? Her voice was dangerous now. Go ahead, Brandon. Finish the sentence. From my what? From your committee colleague, he said flatly. Yes, my colleague, who happens to be a very successful investor. But if you're too proud or too paranoid to see the opportunity, I'll think about it. They went to bed in silence, lying side by side like corpses arranged for viewing. Brandon stared at the ceiling, hyper-aware of every breath, every movement. At 2 a.m., he was still awake when Jacqueline shifted in her sleep, murmuring something unintelligible. Then, clear as code executing, Christian. Not Chris. Not Blackwood. Christian. Spoken with the kind of unconscious intimacy that comes from repetition, from practice, from saying a name against someone's skin in the dark. Brandon lay perfectly still, his heart hammering against his ribs. Jacqueline shifted again, burrowing deeper into her pillow, oblivious to the catastrophic error she'd just made. He got up carefully, quietly, and padded to his office. The servers hummed their midnight song as he stood at the window, looking out at the city lights. Somewhere out there, Christian Blackwood was probably sleeping peacefully, unaware that his name had just been spoken in the wrong bedroom by the wrong woman's sleeping lips. Brandon pulled out his phone and scrolled to Lucas's number. His thumb hovered over the call button. 3 in the morning was too early, even for emergency debugging. But this wasn't a bug in the code. This was a full system failure. He typed out a message. I need your help. Lucas, because he was Lucas, responded within minutes. Whatever you need. Full investigation. Everything. You sure? Brandon looked back toward the bedroom where his wife slept, dreaming of another man. No, but do it anyway. Consider it done. I'm sorry, man. Yeah, me too. Brandon set down the phone and went back to bed, sliding in beside the stranger wearing his wife's face. She murmured something else, something soft and indistinct, and he wondered how many nights she'd been whispering another man's name while he slept beside her, oblivious. Their 15th anniversary was over. In a few hours, the sun would rise over the Sandias, and they'd pretend everything was normal. Jacqueline would make coffee and check her phone. He'd review code and prep for meetings. They'd move through their house like actors who'd forgotten their lines but couldn't leave the stage. But Brandon knew now, with the clarity of clean code, that their marriage had been corrupted beyond repair. The only question was whether to attempt recovery or accept the crash. In her sleep, Jacqueline reached for him, her hand finding his in the dark. For a moment, muscle memory kicked in, and he almost squeezed back. Then he remembered whose name she'd spoken, and he let her hand fall away. The space between them was only inches, but it might as well have been miles of desert, vast and impossible to cross. Lucas Martinez lived in a converted warehouse in the Sawmill District, a space that looked more like a tech startup than a PI's office. Monitors covered one wall, surveillance equipment filled custom-built shelves, and a top-off-the-line espresso machine gurgled in the corner. Brandon sat across from his oldest friend, watching him process what he'd just heard. Jesus, Brandon. Lucas ran a hand through his black hair, still thick at 35. Jacqueline and Christian Blackwood? I don't know for sure, that's why I'm here. But you suspect? She said his name in her sleep. Brandon's voice cracked on the words. You don't say someone's name like that unless you're used to saying it. Lucas finished. Fuck, I'm sorry, man. They'd known each other since 3rd grade at Montezuma Elementary. 2 kids bonding over broken Spanish and love for computers. Lucas had traded his hacking skills for a PI license after a stint with APD's Cyber Crimes Unit. If anyone could uncover the truth without destroying what was left of Brandon's dignity, it was him. What do you need? Lucas asked, already shifting into professional mode. Everything. Where she goes, who she sees, what she's really doing at these committee meetings. Brandon pulled out a folded check. I'll pay your full rate. Put that away before I punch you. Lucas pushed the check back. We're family, hermano. You helped me start this business. This one's on the house. Lucas. No arguments. Now let's talk logistics. I'll need access to her vehicle, her patterns. Anything that helps me track her without raising suspicion. Brandon thought about their garage, about the Mercedes Jacqueline babied like a third child they'd never had. I can install a GPS tracker, small enough she won't notice. You sure you want to do this? Once we open this door, it's already open. I just need to see what's on the other side. Lucas studied him with those dark eyes that had spotted bullies before they threw punches and seen through every bluff at their poker games. Okay, but we do this right. Legal, clean, nothing that compromises you in court later. Court? The word tasted foreign in Brandon's mouth. Hope for the best, prepare for the worst. That's what you taught me about system design, right? They spent the next hour planning. Brandon would create a fictional conference in Denver, leaving Thursday morning and returning Saturday night. 3 days for Lucas to tail Jacqueline without interference. What about the GPS? Lucas asked. I'll handle it tonight. She takes Ambien. Once she's out, she's out. And if she catches you? Then I'm checking the tire pressure. Brandon managed a weak smile. Concerned husband, right? Lucas didn't smile back. This is going to hurt, Brandon, whatever I find. It already hurts. No. Lucas's voice was gentle but firm. This is just the preview. The feature presentation is going to be brutal. Brandon left as the sun was setting, painting the Sandia Mountains the color of dried blood. He drove home slowly, rehearsing his lies. The irony wasn't lost on him lying to catch a liar, deceiving the deceiver. Jacqueline was in the kitchen when he arrived, assembling one of her elaborate charcuterie boards for book club. The same book club that had mysteriously moved from Wednesdays to Thursdays, conflicting with her committee meetings, leading to her missing the last 3 months. Hey, she said without looking up, arranging prosciutto roses like she was creating art. Good day? Productive. Actually, I need to go to Denver Thursday. Now she looked up. This Thursday? Investor meeting. Davidson wants to see the beta before he commits. The lie flowed easily. Too easily. I'll be back Saturday. Something flickered in her eyes. Relief? Oh, that's fine. I have committee stuff anyway. Of course you do. She either missed his tone or ignored it. Will Emily be going with you? Why would Emily go with me? I don't know. She usually does, doesn't she? Jacqueline placed a fig with unnecessary precision. She's very attentive. She's my assistant, Jackie. It's literally her job to be attentive. Right. A brie wedge joined the arrangement. Just wondering. Brandon watched his wife work, noting the way her hands moved with practiced efficiency, the way she'd learned to arrange food for photographs rather than eating. When had she become someone who performed life rather than lived it? I'm going to pack, he said. Already? You don't leave for 2 days. I like to be prepared. You like to control things, she corrected, not unkindly. But sure, go pack for your very important meeting. That night, Brandon lay awake until Jacqueline's breathing deepened into the rhythm of ambient sleep. He slipped out of bed, grabbed the tracker from his office, smaller than a quarter, magnetic, with a 2-week battery and padded barefoot to the garage. Jacqueline's white Mercedes gleamed under the overhead light. He'd bought it for her 40th birthday, surprising her with a red bow that had cost more than most people's car payments. She'd cried then, real tears, promising to take care of it forever. Forever had lasted about as long as everything else. Brandon slid under the car, feeling for the perfect spot. Behind the rear wheel well, tucked where no mechanic would notice unless they were looking. The magnet clicked softly against metal. What are you doing? Brandon's heart stopped. He slid out to find Jacqueline standing in the doorway, silk robe wrapped tight, eyes foggy with sleep. Thought I heard something, he said, amazed at how steady his voice sounded. Wanted to check your tires. That construction on Montgomery has been leaving nails everywhere. She blinked slowly, processing through pharmaceutical haze. Oh, find anything? No, you're good. My protective husband. The words might have been tender if they hadn't sounded so much like lines from a script. Come back to bed. He followed her upstairs, tracker installed, marriage GPS enabled. In bed, she curled against him, seeking warmth. Brandon stared at the ceiling, wondering when his wife's touch had started feeling like betrayal. Thursday morning came too fast. Brandon made a show of packing, printing fake boarding passes, calling an Uber to the airport. "Text me when you land," Jacqueline said, kissing his cheek at the door. She smelled like coffee and the Joe Malone perfume he'd given her last Christmas. "I will. Good luck with Davidson." "Thanks." They stood there playing married couple until the Uber honked. "Go," she said, already reaching for her phone. "Don't want to miss your flight." Brandon climbed into the car, watching their house shrink in the rear window. At the airport, he walked inside, waited 10 minutes, then caught another Uber to Lucas's warehouse. "Tracker's live," Lucas said, showing him the monitor. A blinking dot marked Jacqueline's location, home. "Now we wait." "How long?" "Depends on how careful she's being. Could be hours, could be days." "I've got time." Lucas handed him coffee, strong and bitter. "You sure you're ready for this?" Brandon thought about 15 years of marriage, about hot air balloon proposals and midnight coding sessions, and the way Jacqueline used to laugh at his jokes. Then he thought about Christian's name on her sleeping lips, and $8,000 wine parties and bracelets that cost more than some people's cars. "I'm ready." But as they sat watching the dot that represented his wife, waiting for her to drive toward another man, Brandon knew Lucas had been right. The preview was over. The feature was about to begin, and it was going to be brutal. The dot started moving at 10:47 a.m. "She's heading north on I-25, Lucas narrated, tracking Jacqueline's Mercedes on his center monitor. "Passing Jefferson. San Mateo, looks like. Yeah, she's taking the tramway exit." Brandon gripped his coffee mug hard enough to crack ceramic. "That's nowhere near La Posada." "No, it's not." Lucas pulled up a second screen, fingers flying over the keyboard. "But it is the route to Tamaya Resort, the Hyatt Regency Tamaya. Sprawled along the Rio Grande on Santa Ana Pueblo land, it was the kind of place where privacy came standard and discretion was included in the room rate. Brandon had hosted a company retreat there once. Jacqueline had called it romantically isolated. "I'm heading out," Lucas said, already grabbing his keys and a camera bag. "You can watch from here, or I'm coming." Brandon: "I'll stay in the car. I need to see." Lucas looked like he wanted to argue, but nodded. "Your funeral, brother." They took Lucas's modified Honda Accord, invisible in its ordinariness, tricked out with tinted windows and enough surveillance equipment to make the NSA jealous. The 25-minute drive felt like hours, suburbs giving way to Pueblo land, cottonwoods lining the Rio Grande like nature's privacy fence. "There," Lucas said as they pulled into the resort's sprawling parking lot. Jacqueline's Mercedes sat near the valet stand, gleaming in the high desert sun. "Looks like she valeted. Fancy. She always valets. Says she can't stand walking in heels." Lucas found a spot with clear sight lines to the entrance. They settled in to wait, windows cracked for air, Lucas's camera ready with a telephoto lens that could count eyelashes at 100 yards. "You know," Lucas said after 10 minutes of silence, "there could be an innocent explanation. Maybe the committee really is meeting here." "Check their website." Lucas pulled out his phone, thumbed to the Heritage Foundation page. "Today's events? Let's see. Nothing. No committee meetings listed." "Check Tamaya's event calendar." More scrolling. "Corporate retreat for Blue Sky Investments in the main ballroom. Wedding reception tonight in the River Room. Nothing about arts committees or charities." Brandon said nothing, watching the entrance like it might reveal the secrets of the universe. At 11:23, he got his answer. Christian Blackwood emerged from a black Bentley, tossing keys to the valet with the casual arrogance of a man who'd never worried about anything as pedestrian as parking. 6'2", silver hair that looked professionally windswept, wearing a linen suit that probably cost more than most people's monthly mortgage. "That him?" Lucas asked, already knowing the answer from the way Brandon's knuckles went white. "That's him." Christian didn't go inside immediately. Instead, he leaned against a pillar, checking his Patek Philippe watch. Waiting. At 11:26, Jacqueline appeared. She floated out of the resort like she was walking a runway, wearing a sundress Brandon had never seen white, flowing, the kind of thing she used to mock on other women as trying too hard. Her hair was different, too, styled in waves that must have taken hours. "Jesus," Lucas muttered, raising his camera. The shutter clicked rapid fire as Christian's face transformed, breaking into a smile that belonged in toothpaste commercials. Jacqueline matched it, her whole body angling toward him like a flower finding sun. They didn't kiss too public, too risky, but the way Christian's hand settled on the small of her back as he guided her inside said everything. "Did you get it?" Brandon's voice sounded like gravel. "Every frame." Lucas lowered the camera. "You want to go?" "Not yet." They waited. 40 minutes later, movement through the resort's massive windows caught Lucas's attention. Private terrace, west side, 2 o'clock. Brandon grabbed the binoculars from the glove compartment, focused on the terrace. Jacqueline and Christian sat at a table for two, champagne flutes catching the light. She was laughing, head thrown back, hand resting on his arm. He was leaning in, saying something that made her blush. "That's enough," Brandon said, setting down the binoculars. "I've seen enough." But Lucas was still shooting, professional instincts overriding friendship. "Hold on, something's happening." Through the lens, Brandon watched Christian pull out a small velvet box. Not a ring box too big, but jewelry-sized. Jacqueline's hands flew to her mouth in theatrical surprise. Inside was a pair of earrings that caught the light like captured stars. "Diamond studs," Lucas said. "Big ones. We're talking 5 figures, easy." Jacqueline let Christian put them on her, his fingers lingering against her neck. Then she kissed him. Not a thank you peck, not a friendly gesture. A kiss that made promises and broke vows. "Drive," Brandon said. "Now." Lucas started the car without argument. They were 5 miles down I-25 before Brandon spoke again. "I need more. Financial records, hotel receipts, everything. I can dig deeper, but it'll take time. And probably some gray area methods." "Do it." Back at the warehouse, Lucas uploaded the photos while Brandon paced like a caged animal. Each image was a nail in his marriage's coffin. Jacqueline's radiant smile, Christian's possessive touch, the champagne, the diamonds, the kiss. "I've got something else," Lucas said, pulling up credit card records on another screen. "Remember you mentioned she might have other cards?" "Yeah?" "Well, I may have done some preliminary searching. Found an American Express account opened 3 months ago. Jacqueline Chen and Christian Blackwood, both authorized users." Brandon stopped pacing. "Show me." The statements read like an affair's itinerary. 4 Seasons Hotel, $400 lunch. Every Thursday, La Posada Spa. Couples massages, always booked for weekday afternoons. Tiffany and Company, $8,000 charge from last month private jet charter to Scottsdale, $15,000 Hotel Bel Air, Los Angeles. 3-night stay totaling $4,500. "These match up," Lucas said, cross-referencing with another screen. "Every time Jacqueline told you she was at a spa weekend or visiting her sister in Phoenix, there's a corresponding charge. She was with him." "How much total?" Lucas ran the numbers. "Over the past 3 months, they've spent $127,000. Brandon laughed, but it sounded like breaking glass. $127,000. That's more than some people make in 2 years. There's more. Lucas pulled up hotel records, fingers dancing over the keyboard with the skill that had made him APD's secret weapon. Security logs from the 4 Seasons. Jacqueline's keycard accessing the penthouse suite. Christian's permanent suite. How often? Twice a week, minimum, sometimes more. Lucas turned to face his friend. "Brandon, this isn't just an affair. This is a full relationship. They're playing house with your money and his influence." Brandon sank into a chair, the weight of evidence crushing him like gravity had suddenly tripled. In his pocket, his phone buzzed. Jacqueline, right on schedule. Landed safe? Meeting go okay? He stared at the message, at the casual lie embedded in her concern. She thought he was in Denver, thought he was pitching investors, thought he was as blind as he'd been 3 months ago when this started. "What do you want to do?" Lucas asked gently. Brandon typed back, "All good. Meeting in an hour." Her response was immediate. "Good luck, baby." Baby. She'd called Christian's name in her sleep, but still texted Brandon endearments out of habit. The cognitive dissonance made his head spin. "I want everything," Brandon said finally. "Every receipt, every photo, every text message if you can get them. Build me a case so airtight that she can't wiggle out with tears and excuses. And then, Brandon looked at the photos on Lucas's monitor. His wife, radiant with another man's attention, wearing another man's diamonds, living another life entirely. Then I burn it all down. Lucas nodded, understanding. I'll keep digging. Give me a week, maybe 2. I'll have everything you need. No rush, Brandon said, standing to leave. I've got to pretend to be in Denver for 2 more days anyway. Where are you actually going to stay? Hotel downtown. Maybe I'll catch up on coding. Maybe I'll drink myself stupid. Haven't decided yet. Lucas grabbed his shoulder as he reached the door. You sure you're okay? No. Brandon looked at his oldest friend, managing something that might have been a smile in better light. But I will be, eventually. He left Lucas to his digital excavation and drove aimlessly through Albuquerque, past the places that mapped his life with Jacqueline. The coffee shop where they'd had their 3rd date, the park where they'd talked about kids they'd never have, the gallery where she'd bought the painting that still hung in their bedroom, 2 figures reaching for each other across an impossible distance. He'd thought it was romantic then. Now it felt prophetic. His phone buzzed again. Jacqueline. Committee meeting ran long but so productive. Home late. Don't wait up. Love you. Brandon pulled over, staring at the message. Committee meeting. At Tamaya Resort. With champagne and diamonds and another man's hands in her hair. He typed variations of responses. I know where you really were. How's Christian? Stop lying to me. I'm filing for divorce. He deleted them all, finally settling on, okay. See you Saturday. Let her think she was winning. Let her believe her perfect deception was holding. Lucas would find the evidence. Brandon would build his case. And when the time came, Jacqueline would learn what happened when you debugged a relationship with lies. The code would compile. The program would run. And the output would destroy everything. Brandon had been back from his fictional Denver trip for 3 days when Lucas called at midnight. You need to see this, now. 20 minutes later, Brandon stood in Lucas's warehouse, staring at a monitor displaying grainy security footage. The timestamp read 2 weeks ago, 2:17 a.m., location tag marking it as the Hotel Valencia. Watch, Lucas said, hitting play. The footage showed a hallway, elegant in that understated boutique hotel way, empty for several seconds. Then Jacqueline appeared, wearing the black cocktail dress she'd told Brandon she'd spilled wine on at a fundraiser, ruining it beyond salvage. She was laughing, shoes in her hand, clearly drunk. Christian followed, suit jacket draped over his shoulder, bow tie undone. He caught her around the waist, spinning her into the wall. What followed was 15 seconds of kissing that made Brandon's stomach turn inside out. They stumbled to room 412. Christian fumbled with the key card while Jacqueline ran her hands through his silver hair. The door opened. They disappeared inside. The hallway returned to emptiness. Jesus, Brandon breathed. There's more. Lucas clicked to another file. This is from last Thursday, the day you were supposedly in Denver. Different footage, same hotel. This time the timestamp read 11:47 a.m. Jacqueline entered the frame wearing yoga clothes, the same outfit she'd left the house in, claiming she had a noon class. She knocked on the same door. It opened immediately, Christian's arm visible as he pulled her inside. How did you... Night manager with a gambling problem and a flexible relationship with privacy laws? Lucas minimized the videos. But that's just the appetizer. Ready for the main course? Brandon nodded, past the point of surprise, approaching numb. Lucas opened a folder labeled JC Personal. Inside were dozens of scanned documents. Your wife's been busy. Remember that antique desk in her art studio? The one with the locked drawer she said held tax documents? Yeah? Well, unless love letters qualify as tax deductions now, she's been lying. The first scan filled the screen. Christian's handwriting, bold and assured. My darling Jay, last night was beyond words. The way you looked in the moonlight, the sound of your laugh echoing off the canyon walls, I feel like a teenager again, foolish and completely intoxicated by you. How did I exist 48 years without knowing you? How did I breathe? There are 23 of these, Lucas said quietly. Dating back 4 months. Want me to keep reading? No. Brandon's voice was hollow. Show me the financial stuff. Lucas pulled up bank statements. Not from their joint accounts, Brandon monitored those. These were new accounts he'd never seen. She opened a personal checking and savings at Wells Fargo in January, separate from your joint finances. Lucas highlighted transactions. Regular deposits from your joint account. Small amounts, $500 here, $1,000 there, nothing that would trigger your alerts. But it adds up. How much? She's moved about $50,000 over 4 months. But that's not the interesting part. Lucas switched screens. She's been making cash withdrawals, large ones, always right before meeting Christian. Cash for what? He's rich. That's what I thought, until I found this. Another document appeared. Rental agreement for a condo in Uptown, paid 6 months in advance. Cash. Guess whose name isn't on it? Brandon studied the agreement. A luxury condo in the same building where Christian kept his company's corporate apartment, signed by Jacqueline alone, using her maiden name. She's building an exit strategy, he realized. Gets better, or worse, depending on your perspective. Lucas opened another folder. Remember wondering if she was sharing information about your company? Yeah. She is. Email screenshots filled the screen, from Jacqueline's personal Gmail to Christian's corporate account. She's been forwarding your investor updates, development timelines, even that confidential merger discussion with TechStrat. Brandon read the emails, each one a violation worse than the last. His wife hadn't just betrayed their marriage, she'd betrayed his life's work, sharing insider information with a competitor who happened to be fucking her. One email made him stop breathing. From jacqueline.martinez@gmail.com to cblackwood@blackwoodventures.com. Subject Opportunity C, Brandon mentioned. TechStrat is valued at $50 million, but might accept $35 million if the buyer moves fast. He's distracted with the new AI launch and won't notice if you position yourself. The weak point is their cloud infrastructure, exactly what your portfolio company NetScale could provide. All my love, Jay. That's corporate espionage, Lucas said unnecessarily. That's jail time. When was this sent? 6 weeks ago. 2 days later, guess who suddenly expressed interest in TechStrat? Brandon knew without asking. Blackwood Ventures. Bingo! He underbid you by $500,000. TechStrat went with him. The scope of the betrayal kept expanding, like a debugger revealing error after error in corrupted code. His wife wasn't just cheating. She was systematically dismantling his business while she did it. There's one more thing, Lucas said, pulling up a final folder. Security footage from your home. Brandon's blood froze. What? Your doorbell camera. You forgot it backs up to the cloud. Lucas clicked play. This is from 3 weeks ago, Tuesday afternoon. You were in San Francisco. The footage showed their front door from the outside. A delivery truck pulled up. But instead of a uniformed driver, Christian Blackwood stepped out. He walked to the door with the confidence of someone who belonged there. The door opened before he could knock. Jacqueline, wearing a silk robe at 2 p.m., pulled him inside. They fucked in our house, Brandon said flatly. In our bed. For 4 hours, Lucas confirmed. He left at 6:17, 20 minutes before you got home from the airport. Brandon walked to Lucas's window, staring out at the Albuquerque skyline. The city lights blurred and swam. He wasn't crying. He was too empty for tears. This was something else, some kind of emotional vertigo where the world tilted and wouldn't right itself. What do you need? Lucas asked. Everything. Every document, every photo, every video. Put it all on an encrypted drive. And then? Then I talked to Blake. Your lawyer? Brandon, with this evidence, you could destroy her. The espionage alone, I know. Brandon turned from the window. But I need to be smart, strategic. She's been planning her exit for months. I need to plan mine better. Lucas nodded, already copying files. For what it's worth, I'm sorry. Nobody deserves this. You know what the worst part is? Brandon watched the progress bar crawl across the screen. I still love her. Or the person I thought she was. How fucked up is that? That's not fucked up, that's human. They sat in silence while the files transferred, years of marriage compressing into gigabytes of betrayal. When it finished, Lucas handed him the drive. What's your next move? I go home, kiss my wife hello, ask about her day, listen to her lie about committee meetings and yoga classes. Brandon pocketed the drive. And I start building a case that will make her wish she'd just asked for a divorce like a normal person. You sure you can do that? Act normal? Brandon thought about all the times he debugged code, tracing errors back to their source, fixing problems line by line. This was just another system failure, another crash to diagnose. I built a company from nothing by being patient and methodical, he said. I can pretend to love someone who stopped loving me months ago. He left Lucas's warehouse with the drive burning in his pocket like a digital scarlet letter. At home, Jacqueline's Mercedes sat in the garage, GPS tracker still faithfully reporting her movements. Inside, she was asleep on the couch, wine glass empty on the coffee table, phone clutched in her hand. Brandon stood in the doorway, studying her. Even in sleep, she looked like a stranger wearing his wife's face. He wondered if she dreamed of Christian, if she compared their kisses, if she laughed about her stupid, trusting husband with her silver-haired prince. Her phone buzzed. Without thinking, Brandon leaned over to see the screen. Christian, can't stop thinking about this afternoon. You're incredible. Same time Thursday? Jacqueline smiled in her sleep, pulling the phone closer. Brandon went to his office and locked the door. He had calls to make, lawyers to contact, strategies to plan. But first, he poured himself 3 fingers of scotch and stood at his window, looking out at the city where he'd built his dreams and lost his marriage. Somewhere out there, Christian Blackwood was probably planning Thursday's rendezvous. Somewhere, Jacqueline's secret condo waited for her escape. Somewhere, the truth sat on an encrypted drive, ready to explode like a digital bomb. Brandon raised his glass to the indifferent stars. Game on. 2 weeks. That's what Blake Morrison, Albuquerque's premier divorce attorney, had said after reviewing the evidence. Give me 2 weeks to position your assets, document everything, and prepare for war. Can you maintain the facade that long? Brandon had laughed, bitter as burnt coffee. I've been maintaining it for months without knowing it. What's 2 more weeks? Now, sitting across from Jacqueline at their breakfast table on a Tuesday morning, he understood the real weight of those 14 days. Every smile was a Herculean effort. Every casual touch felt like handling plutonium. Every I love you tasted like ashes. Mom wants us to come for dinner Friday, Jacqueline said, scrolling through her phone. Dad's birthday, Roberto Martinez's 70th birthday. Brandon had known the man for 15 years, considered him a second father. The thought of sitting at their table, pretending everything was normal while their daughter plotted her escape, made his stomach churn. Wouldn't miss it, he managed. You sure? I know how busy you are with the launch. There it was, the subtle dig, the implication that work always came first. She'd been laying groundwork, he realized, painting him as the absent husband for when she needed sympathy during the divorce. Your dad's 70th is more important than any launch. She looked up, surprised. Really? Family first, right? Something flickered in her eyes, guilt, suspicion? But then her phone buzzed and her face lit up with that private smile he'd come to hate. Committee stuff? He asked, sipping coffee that might as well have been motor oil. Oh yes, finalizing the gala details. She typed quickly, efficiently, like she was coding her own secret life. Actually, that reminds me. My sister wants to throw a surprise party for Dad on Saturday, in Phoenix. I thought I'd drive down Friday night, help with setup. Lie. Emily had already checked Ana Martinez was in Cabo with her husband, posting margaritas on Instagram, but Brandon just nodded. Want me to come? I could drive separately. Meet you there. No. Too quick. Too sharp. She modulated her tone. I mean, someone should stay with Dad on his actual birthday. We'll do the surprise when we're all in Phoenix. Makes sense. They performed their morning ritual pecks on cheeks, promises to be home for dinner that neither would keep, the intricate choreography of a marriage in its death throes. After she left, Brandon went to his office and pulled up the GPS tracker. Her Mercedes headed not to La Posada or any committee meeting, but straight to Christian's corporate apartment. Brandon closed the laptop and called Emily. Clear my afternoon. Personal matter. The Richardson presentation is at 3. Move it. Please. M. Silence. Then, of course, anything else? Yes. Start documenting every call Jacqueline makes to the office, every question about our projects, every request for information. Log it all. Brandon. I know you know, Em. I know you've known for a while. A longer silence. I hoped I was wrong. You weren't, and I'm going to need your help proving it. That afternoon, Brandon met with Blake in his downtown office, all leather and mahogany and the kind of gravitas that cost $500 an hour. The corporate espionage is your silver bullet, Blake said, reviewing Lucas's files. But it's also a nuclear option. Press charges, and this goes public. Your company, your reputation, everything becomes fair game. I don't care about reputation. You will. Trust me. Blake leaned back, fingers steepled. My recommendation? Use it as leverage. She agrees to a quick, quiet divorce with minimal asset division, or we pursue criminal charges. What about Christian? What about him? You can't sue someone for sleeping with your wife, but the corporate theft. Blake smiled like a shark scenting blood. That's different. Blackwood Ventures won't want that publicity. He'll throw her under the bus so fast she'll get whiplash. Good. They spent 2 hours strategizing, wargaming scenarios, preparing for every possible countermove. By the time Brandon left, he felt hollowed out but oddly steady. Having a plan helped. Knowing the ending helped more. Friday came too fast. Brandon found himself in Roberto and Carmen Martinez's adobe home in the North Valley, surrounded by family photos that included too many of him and Jacqueline in happier times. The house smelled like green chile and memories. Mijo. Roberto embraced him, still strong at 70. Where's my daughter? Running late from a committee meeting. She'll be here. She arrived 20 minutes later, breathless and beautiful in a dress Brandon recognized as new. Probably chosen by Christian. Probably peeled off by him too, but Brandon pushed that thought away. Sorry, sorry. She kissed her father, then her mother, playing the devoted daughter perfectly. Traffic was horrible. Traffic from Christian's apartment to her parents' house was indeed horrible, Brandon thought. All 5 minutes of it. Dinner was torture disguised as tradition. Carmen's enchiladas, Roberto's stories about the old days at Sandia Labs, Jacqueline's brother Miguel arguing politics with his teenage daughter. Normal, familiar, false as a $3 bill. So, Carmen said, serving flan she'd made from her mother's recipe, when are you two going to give us grandchildren? The table went silent. Miguel's wife kicked him. Roberto suddenly found his flan fascinating. Mom, Jacqueline said quietly, we've discussed this. I know, but you're not getting younger, mija, and Brandon would make such a good father. Brandon watched Jacqueline's mask slip for just a moment, saw something raw and painful flash across her face. Then it was gone, replaced by her practiced smile. Maybe someday, she said, reaching for his hand across the table. Right, honey? Her fingers were cold. He squeezed them anyway, playing his part. Right. After dinner, Brandon found himself on the back portal with Roberto, sharing a beer and watching the sunset paint the Sandias purple. You know, Roberto said slowly, Carmen and I had troubles too, early on. Brandon's chest tightened. Sir? Marriage is hard, mijo. 2 people trying to become one. It's like trying to merge 2 different operating systems. He smiled at his own tech metaphor. Sometimes the code conflicts. Sometimes it does. But you debug it. You patch it. You keep working until it runs smooth again. Roberto's dark eyes, so like his daughter's, held decades of wisdom. That's what love is. Not the feelings come and go like weather. Love is the choice to keep debugging. Brandon took a long pull of beer to avoid responding. How could he tell this good man that his daughter had installed a completely different operating system? That she was running her love life on a parallel platform he couldn't access? She loves you, Roberto said quietly. Whatever's happening, whatever's gone wrong, my daughter loves you. I see it in how she looks at you when you're not watching. Brandon wanted to laugh, or cry, or show Roberto the photos of Jacqueline looking at Christian with actual love, not the performance she gave her family. Instead, he said, I love her too. It wasn't a lie. He loved the woman Roberto thought his daughter was. He loved the person Jacqueline had been, or pretended to be, or might have become in a different life. That had to count for something. Later, as they prepared to leave, Carmen pulled him aside in the kitchen. Take care of her, she whispered, pressing a foil-wrapped plate of leftovers into his hands. She's not as strong as she pretends. I know. Brandon said, accepting the plate and the concern behind it. I'm trying. In the car, Jacqueline was quiet until they reached I-40. Then, I'm sorry about my mom. The grandchildren thing. It's okay. No, it's not. We agreed. No kids until the company was stable. We agreed on a lot of things. She glanced at him sharply. What's that supposed to mean? Nothing. Just that plans change. Do you want kids? Is that what this is about? Brandon almost laughed. She was fishing, looking for reasons to justify what she'd already done. Give her a grievance, and she'd nurture it into an excuse. I want honesty, he said instead. I want trust. I want to know my partner has my back. I do have your back. Always. The lie slid out so easily, lubricated by practice. Brandon wondered if she even recognized them as lies anymore, or if she'd rewritten reality to match her needs. At home, Jacqueline disappeared upstairs to pack for her fictional Phoenix trip. Brandon poured himself a scotch and stood at his office window, Roberto's words echoing, "Love is the choice to keep debugging." But what if the code was corrupted beyond repair? What if the virus had infected the core files? What if the only solution was a complete system wipe? His phone buzzed. Lucas. She just booked a suite at the Phoenician. 2 nights. Charged to the joint Amex with Christian. So Phoenix was real, just not the sister part. Brandon typed back, "Let her go." The more evidence, the better. You sure you're okay? Brandon looked up at the ceiling, hearing Jacqueline's footsteps as she packed for her romantic weekend with another man. In a week, Blake would be ready. The papers would be filed. The bomb would drop. No, he typed. But I will be. He finished his scotch and climbed the stairs to their bedroom, where Jacqueline was folding lingerie he'd never seen into a suitcase that would never make it to her sister's house. Need help? He offered. Almost done. She held up a black negligee, pretending to consider it. Too much for a family party? Definitely. She laughed and packed it anyway. They both knew it wasn't for family. The pretense was tissue-thin, but they maintained it like actors who'd signed contracts they couldn't break. That night, Brandon lay beside his wife for what he knew would be one of the last times. She fell asleep quickly, aided by wine and the anticipation of her weekend plans. He stayed awake, memorizing the sound of her breathing, the way her hair spread across the pillow, the small scar on her shoulder from a childhood accident. Tomorrow she'd drive to Phoenix. Tomorrow she'd fall asleep in Christian's arms. Tomorrow the countdown would be at 6 days. But tonight, in the dark of their bedroom, Brandon let himself grieve for the marriage that had died months ago but hadn't been buried yet. He grieved for Roberto and Carmen, who would lose the son they'd chosen. He grieved for the children they'd never have, the anniversary trips they'd never take, the growing old together that had become growing apart. Mostly, he grieved for the man he'd been trusting, optimistic, believing that love could debug any problem if you just kept working at it. That man was as dead as his marriage. What remained was someone harder, smarter, with encrypted files where his heart used to be. 6 more days. Then the whole system would crash, and from the wreckage he'd build something new, something better, something that could never be corrupted again. In her sleep, Jacqueline murmured and reached for him. For once, she didn't say Christian's name. Brandon let her find his hand, holding on to this ghost of intimacy one last time. 6 more days. The countdown had begun. Blake Morrison's office occupied the entire 20th floor of the Albuquerque Plaza Tower, its floor-to-ceiling windows offering a view that stretched from the Rio Grande to the Sandias. The kind of view that said, I win cases and destroy lives, and I'm very, very good at both. Bourbon? Blake offered, already pouring from a crystal decanter that cost more than most people's cars. It's 10 in the morning, Brandon observed, and you're about to dissect 15 years of marriage. Trust me, you'll want the bourbon. Brandon accepted the glass, letting the burn ground him in the present. Blake spread Lucas's evidence across his conference table like a general planning an invasion. First things first, Blake said, adjusting his wire-rimmed glasses. New Mexico is a community property state. Everything acquired during marriage is split 50-50, normally. Normally? Marital misconduct can affect asset division. And what we have here? Blake gestured at the photos, the bank statements, the evidence of corporate espionage. This is marital misconduct on steroids. So she doesn't get half? She doesn't get shit if we play this right. Blake pulled out a legal pad, his handwriting as precise as his reputation. But first, we need a full financial autopsy. I'm bringing in Kate Volkov, best forensic accountant in the Southwest. If your wife hid a penny in the Cayman Islands, Kate will find it. Kate arrived 30 minutes later, looking nothing like Brandon's mental image of a forensic accountant. Mid-40s, yoga fit, with steel gray hair and eyes that could audit your soul. "Show me everything," she said without preamble. "Bank accounts, credit cards, investment portfolios, cryptocurrency, even your coffee shop rewards cards. Financial infidelity always leaves tracks." They spent 4 hours excavating Brandon's financial life, personal accounts, business holdings, the complex web of LLCs and partnerships that built his tech empire. Kate worked with the intensity of a code debugger, following money trails with relentless precision. "Here," she said finally, pointing at a series of transactions. "Your wife's been smart, but not smart enough." "What am I looking at?" "Structured withdrawals. Never more than $9,999 to avoid federal reporting requirements. But the pattern is clear." Kate's fingers flew over her laptop. "She's pulled $487,000 over the past 6 months. Brandon's bourbon suddenly tasted like battery acid. $500,000? Transferred to 3 different accounts. One in her maiden name, one in an LLC called JM Consulting Cute, her initials, and one offshore account in Belize. Belize? Standard hiding spot for marital assets. She probably Googled how to hide money from spouse and followed the WikiHow. Kate's smile was sharp. "Amateur hour. I've already frozen the LLC, and my contact at Treasury can lock down the Belize account within 48 hours. Blake leaned back, satisfaction radiating from every pore. "This changes everything. Theft of marital assets plus the corporate espionage. We're not talking 50-50 anymore. We're talking full forfeiture." "What about Christian?" Brandon asked. "He's been receiving insider information. That's securities fraud, right?" "Technically, yes. But proving he traded on it is harder. Unless..." Blake's eyes gleamed. "You said he's an investor. Any chance he's invested in your company?" Brandon's world tilted. Jesus Christ. He's our silent partner in the new AI venture." The room went silent. Kate stopped typing. Blake set down his bourbon with the care of someone handling nitroglycerin. "Run that by me again," Blake said slowly. 6 months ago, we needed capital for the AI project. Christian came in as a silent partner through one of his holding companies, 20% stake for $10 million. And when did the affair start? Brandon did the math, pieces clicking into place like malicious code. 4 months ago, 2 months after he became our partner. "Son of a bitch," Kate breathed. "He seduced your wife to get inside information on his own investment. That's actually brilliant." "It's insider trading," Blake corrected. "It's wire fraud. It's conspiracy. It's a federal case that will end with Christian Blackwood in an orange jumpsuit." "Can we prove it?" Blake smiled like Christmas had come early. "With the emails Jacqueline sent him, the ones detailing confidential merger discussions and development timelines, absolutely." They strategized for another hour, building a case that would destroy both Jacqueline and Christian. But as they talked, a worse realization crept over Brandon. "The funding announcement," he said suddenly. "We're announcing Series B funding next Friday. Black tie gala at Hotel Albuquerque. 300 guests, including every major investor in the Southwest." "So?" "Christian will be there. As our partner, he has to be. And Jacqueline always comes to company events as my wife." Blake and Kate exchanged glances. "That's your end game," Blake said. "Maximum public impact. Expose them both in front of everyone who matters." "That's cruel," Kate observed. "That's justice," Blake countered. "Brandon, this is your chance. We'll have everything ready by then. The divorce papers, the criminal complaint, all of it. 1 week to position your assets and prepare for war." Brandon stood at the window, looking out at the city where he'd built his dreams and lost his marriage. Below, people went about their lives, unaware that 20 floors up, someone was planning the most spectacular implosion of his own existence. "Do it," he said finally. Full scorched earth. I want them to remember what happens when you steal from Brandon Chen. Blake raised his glass. To revenge served at exactly the right temperature. To justice, Brandon corrected, though he wasn't sure he knew the difference anymore. As he left Blake's office, his phone buzzed. Jacqueline texting from Phoenix. Miss you. Dad called to thank us for coming to dinner. He really loves you, you know? Brandon stared at the message, at the casual cruelty of invoking her father while she lay in another man's bed. He typed back, tell your sister happy birthday. Will do. Love you. 2 lies in 4 words. She was getting efficient. Brandon deleted the conversation and drove home to his empty house, where the ghosts of better times haunted every room. In a week, it would all be over. The announcement, the exposure, the marriage, everything would burn in public view. He poured another bourbon, not caring that it was still morning somewhere, and began planning the most important presentation of his life. Not about AI or funding or market domination, about betrayal and consequences, and the price of stealing someone's life while smiling to their face. 7 days until showtime. Brandon raised his glass to the empty room. Let's debug this thing properly. Tuesday morning, 5:47 a.m. While Jacqueline slept off her Phoenix weekend, Brandon sat in his home office with Emily, who'd driven over in the pre-dawn darkness without question. I need you to do something that might end your career, he said without preamble. Emily sipped her coffee, unfazed. More career-ending than helping you document your wife's corporate espionage? I need to restructure everything. Every asset, every holding, every piece of intellectual property. And I need it done without paper trails leading back to me. That's not career-ending. That's just Tuesday. She pulled out her laptop. I assume this is about protecting assets from the divorce? Divorce is the least of it. Christian Blackwood is our silent partner. Emily's fingers froze over the keyboard. The man who's... Yes. Holy shit. Exactly. So we need to move fast. Transfer all IP to a new LLC, one he can't touch. Restructure the cap table to dilute his shares. Everything legal, but everything ironclad. They worked in combat mode, Emily's efficiency matching Brandon's desperation. By the time the sun crested the Sandias, they'd created a labyrinth of legal entities that would take years to untangle. Brandtech Industries LLC now owns all patents and proprietary code, Emily reported. I've backdated the transfer to before Christian's investment, perfectly legal since you'd started the paperwork then. What about his shares? Diluted to 8% through the employee stock option plan we forgot to tell him about. Still worth millions, but he no longer has voting rights or board access. Beautiful. What else? Changed all your beneficiaries. Life insurance, 401k, everything now goes to a trust managed by your sister in California. Jacqueline gets nothing if you mysteriously drive off a cliff. Brandon managed his first real smile in weeks. You're scary good at this. I learned from the best. Emily's expression softened. Are you sure about the nuclear option? Once you press this button, she pressed it first when she sent him our development timeline. This is just returning fire. By noon, Brandon had emptied their joint safe deposit box, moving his mother's jewelry and their stock certificates to a new box in his name only. The irony wasn't lost on him. Jacqueline had been too busy stealing hundreds of thousands to notice him protecting millions. That afternoon, he met with the building manager of their art storage facility. Their collection, carefully curated over years, worth nearly $2 million, needed new security. Change the access code, Brandon instructed. I'm the only authorized person from now on. What about Mrs. Chen? Especially not Mrs. Chen. The manager, who'd seen enough wealthy divorces to recognize the signs, simply nodded. Consider it done. By evening, Brandon had systematically removed Jacqueline's access to everything that mattered. Bank accounts, investment portfolios, business holdings all relocated beyond her reach. It felt like performing surgery on his own life, cutting away the gangrenous parts to save what remained. Lucas called as Brandon was leaving Wells Fargo, having opened individual accounts at 3 different banks. She's back from Phoenix, just pulled into your driveway. How was her weekend? Expensive, Spa treatments, 5-star dining, a shopping spree at Scottsdale Fashion Square, charged about 12 grand to Christian's card. Good. Let her spend his money. She won't have access to mine much longer. At home, Brandon found Jacqueline unpacking in their bedroom, new clothes spread across the bed like evidence. Good trip? He asked, leaning against the doorframe. Exhausting. Anna's pregnant again, can you believe it? Third kid? She held up a sundress that probably cost more than most mortgage payments. Think this is too much for the funding gala? It's perfect. And it was. Perfect for her final performance as Mrs. Brandon Chen. You seem different, she said, studying him. More. Relaxed? Just focused. Big week coming up. The announcement. She abandoned the clothes, crossing to him with something like concern on her face. You've been working so hard. Maybe after the gala we could take a vacation? Somewhere without cell service? The suggestion was so absurd, planning vacations while plotting exits, that Brandon almost laughed. Instead, he played along. Where were you thinking? Maybe Tahiti? Or the Maldives? Somewhere far from everything. Far from subpoenas, he thought. Far from consequences. Let's get through Friday first, he said, kissing her forehead. The gesture felt like handling a venomous snake, careful, controlled, necessary. Of course, Friday. Something flickered in her eyes. Christian will be there, right? As an investor? Wouldn't miss it. Good. It's important to keep investors happy. She turned back to her clothes, casual as a cardiac event. Maybe I should introduce him to some of the museum board members. He mentioned wanting to increase his charitable giving. I'm sure he did. That night, while Jacqueline attended another committee meeting that the GPS tracker placed at Christian's apartment, Brandon met with Blake for final preparations. Assets are secured, Blake confirmed. Kate locked down the Belize account this morning. Your wife will wake up Saturday to find herself effectively penniless. What about the criminal charges? FBI's white-collar crime unit is very interested in Mr. Blackwood's trading patterns. Seems he made some suspiciously well-timed investments based on information only insiders would have. How suspicious? He shorted 2 of your competitors days before you announced technical breakthroughs that tanked their valuations. Made about $6 million in profit. Brandon felt sick. He used my work to destroy other companies? And made your wife an accessory to federal crimes. Blake slid a folder across the desk. Sign these. Power of attorney, asset protection documents, and a few surprises for Friday. Surprises? You'll see. Trust me, it'll be worth the wait. Brandon signed where indicated, each signature another nail in the coffin of his marriage. When he finished, Blake poured 2 glasses of scotch. You know what the best part is? Blake asked. They have no idea. They're so confident in their deception, they can't imagine you've been 3 steps ahead for weeks. Hubris, Brandon agreed. The fatal flaw in every system. Speaking of which, how's the actual funding announcement looking? Series B, $40 million from Andreessen Horowitz and Sequoia. Valuation of $500 million. Brandon smiled grimly. Christian's 8% will still be worth $40 million. If he's not in federal prison. Oh, he will be. Him and your soon-to-be ex-wife. Blake raised his glass. To justice. The expensive kind. They drank, and Brandon drove home through empty streets, his phone buzzing with messages from Jacqueline about traffic and late meetings and lies that no longer mattered. In 3 days, the woman who'd whispered another man's name in her sleep would stand in a ballroom full of everyone she'd tried to impress and watch her life detonate in real time. Brandon pulled into his garage, noting Jacqueline's empty parking space. Somewhere in the city, she was probably in Christian's arms, laughing about her oblivious husband, planning their future with his money. Let them plan. Let them dream. Let them think they'd won. In 72 hours, they'd learn what happened when you tried to debug someone else's life while corrupting your own code beyond repair. The system crash would be spectacular. Wednesday morning arrived with the kind of crystalline clarity that made the high desert feel like the edge of the world. Brandon stood in his office at 6 a.m. staring at a whiteboard covered in connections that would have made a conspiracy theorist weep with joy. The revelation had come at 3 a.m. when insomnia and bourbon collided with memory, Christian's investment hadn't just been about money, it was about positioning. Every detail suddenly aligned like malicious code revealing its purpose. Emily knocked and entered without waiting. "You look like hell." "Christian's not just our investor." Brandon pointed to the whiteboard. "Look at the timeline. He invests in January. Starts the affair in February. By March, he's using Jacqueline's information to short our competitors." "We knew that. But why us? Why my company specifically?" Brandon drew another connection. "Because we're building the AI platform that makes his entire portfolio obsolete. He didn't invest to make money. He invested to control us, then destroy us from the inside." Emily studied the board, her face paling. "The Techstrat acquisition, NetScale's expansion, the Meridian deal that fell through. Holy shit, he's been using us to eliminate his competition. While fucking my wife and stealing our IP." Brandon laughed, but it sounded like breaking glass. "You have to admire the efficiency." "What do we do?" "We give him exactly what he wants. The funding announcement, the big reveal, the perfect stage." Brandon erased the whiteboard with savage strokes. "Call an emergency board meeting. Today, noon." The boardroom at Brandtech occupied the top floor of their building, all glass and steel and intimidation architecture. By noon, every board member was present, faces ranging from curious to concerned. "Gentlemen, ladies," Brandon began, his presentation remote steady in his hand. "We have a situation." He laid it out with clinical precision: Christian's investment, the affair, the corporate espionage, the insider trading. Each revelation landed like a precision strike, leaving the board members increasingly stunned. "You have proof?" asked Margaret Salazar, the lead independent director. Brandon played Jacqueline's email about the Techstrat valuation, then the security footage from Tamaya, then Kate's forensic accounting report. By the time he finished, the room felt airless. "Jesus Christ," muttered David Park, who'd brought Brandon his first institutional funding. This is beyond anything I've imagined." "What do you need from us?" Margaret asked, ever practical. "Your support and your attendance at Friday's gala." Brandon smiled, all teeth and no warmth. "We're going to give Christian Blackwood exactly what he deserves, publicly." "That's risky," David warned. "The publicity could tank our valuation, or it could show the world that Brandtech doesn't tolerate thieves, even when they're sleeping with the CEO's wife." Brandon let that land. "I've restructured everything. Christian's shares are diluted, his board access revoked. He'll get his payout, minus what he stole, then he'll get arrested." "And Jacqueline?" "She made her choice. Now she lives with the consequences." The vote was unanimous. The board would support whatever Brandon needed, attendance at the gala mandatory. As they filed out, Margaret lingered. "I went through something similar," she said quietly. "Not the corporate espionage, but the betrayal. It changes you. I'm counting on it. Just remember, revenge is like writing code while drunk. It feels brilliant at the time, but the morning brings bugs you never anticipated." After she left, Brandon called Lucas. "I need you to do something slightly illegal." "My favorite kind of something. What's up?" "Can you get into Christian's email?" "Already did. Weeks ago." Lucas sounded offended. "What kind of amateur do you take me for? Find everything about his plans for Friday, guest list, arrival time, what he's wearing, everything. On it? Oh, and Brandon, Jacqueline just used the joint card at Neiman Marcus. $8,000 on a gown. Want me to flag it?" "No. Let her buy her funeral dress on my dime. It's poetic." That evening, Brandon worked late, perfecting his presentation for Friday. Not just the funding announcement that was straightforward, but the second presentation, the one that would play after the champagne toasts and congratulations, the one that would burn everything to the ground. He was deep in PowerPoint when his office door opened. Jacqueline stood there in yoga clothes, holding takeout bags from their favorite Thai place. "Thought you might be hungry," she said, entering uninvited. "You've been living at the office." "Big week." "I know. That's why I'm here." She unpacked pad thai and spring rolls with practiced efficiency. "When's the last time you ate actual food?" Brandon couldn't remember. The past week had been bourbon and coffee and whatever Emily forced on him. "Thanks." They ate in strange companionship, like actors between scenes. Jacqueline chatted about the gala preparations, the guest list, the media coverage. Normal wife things if you ignored that she'd been in another man's bed 3 hours ago. Christian's excited about the announcement, she mentioned casually, stabbing a spring roll. He thinks this could be the biggest tech IPO in New Mexico history. He would know. He's made a fortune on insider information. Jacqueline froze. What? Nothing. Just commenting on his market expertise. She studied him, and for a moment Brandon saw something flicker behind her eyes. Doubt? Suspicion? Fear? But then her phone buzzed, and she glanced at it, smiling automatically. Committee stuff? Brandon asked, knowing it was Christian. Always. She stood, gathering the takeout containers. Don't stay too late. You need to be fresh for Friday. Wouldn't want to disappoint. She kissed his cheek, a gesture so routine it had become meaningless. Love you. I know, he said, which wasn't the same as saying it back. After she left, Brandon returned to his presentation, slide by slide, building a story of betrayal and consequence. The funding numbers would get the applause, but the finale would get the gasps. His phone rang. Blake. FBI's ready. They'll have agents at the gala, posing as guests. The moment you give the signal, they move on Christian. And Jacqueline? House arrest initially. She's not a flight risk like Blackwood. Blake paused. You sure you want to do this publicly? We could handle it quietly Monday morning. They conducted their affair publicly, in restaurants, hotels, my own home. They can face the consequences the same way. Your call. Just remember, once this starts, there's no stopping it. Brandon looked at his presentation, at the slides that would detonate 2 lives in front of 300 witnesses. Good. Some code can't be debugged. It can only be deleted. Friday would come soon enough. The gala, the announcement, the careful choreography of destruction. But tonight, Brandon sat in his empty office, perfecting his presentation, while his wife texted another man from their bedroom. The stage was set. The actors were in position. All that remained was raising the curtain on the final act. And what a show it would be. Thursday morning, 7:43 a.m., 24 hours until the gala. Brandon sat at his kitchen island watching Jacqueline make coffee with the focused intensity of someone planning their moves 3 steps ahead. She'd been different since the Thai dinner, watchful, careful, like a predator sensing a trap. Time to bait it. I might have good news, Brandon said, sliding a folder across the granite. But I need you to keep it absolutely confidential. Jacqueline's eyes sharpened. Of course. What is it? Data Vault is looking to acquire us. 100% buyout, $1.2 billion valuation. Her coffee mug paused halfway to her lips. Billion with a B? With a B. But the offer expires Monday. If word leaks, they walk. Brandon watched her process the information, could practically see the calculations running behind her eyes. Christian's 20% would be worth $240 million. Even diluted to 8%, it was still $96 million. When did this happen? Her voice stayed steady, but her knuckles were white around the mug. Yesterday. The board's still debating. Some think we should hold out for more. More than $1 billion? She laughed, high and slightly manic. That's insane. You should take it. Maybe. But the funding announcement tomorrow locks us into a different path. Once we announce Series B, Data Vault will assume we're not interested in selling. Jacqueline set down her mug with exaggerated care. So don't announce. Tell them you need more time. Can't. Contracts are signed. Investors are flying in. Unless... Brandon let it hang, baiting the hook. Unless what? Unless Data Vault makes a preemptive move. If they knew we were announcing funding that would value us at only $500 million, they might formalize their billion-dollar offer tonight. But that would be... insider trading? Only if someone told them. Brandon stood, leaving the folder on the counter. I'm going to the office. Big day tomorrow. He kissed her forehead, feeling her trembling beneath the gesture. The folder sat between them like a lit fuse. Inside were fabricated documents, watermarked with invisible ink that would show up under blacklight, traceable directly back to whoever scanned or photographed them. Brandon? She called as he reached the door. Yeah? I love you. The words hit like bullets. but he'd built armor from worse wounds. See you tonight. At the office, Emily had set up the surveillance system Blake had provided. She took the bait, she reported, monitoring Jacqueline's phone. Called Christian the moment you left. They're meeting at his office in an hour. Perfect. Is Lucas ready? Already in position. He'll document everything. Brandon threw himself into legitimate work, finalizing the real funding announcement while his wife prepared to commit her final act of betrayal. The irony wasn't lost on him. She was stealing fake information about a fake acquisition, while the real news would destroy her anyway. At 11:17 a.m., Lucas texted, "She just handed Christian the documents. He's photographing every page. At 11:34 a.m., they're calling someone. Can't get audio, but Christian looks excited." At 11:52 a.m., Champagne. They're celebrating. At 12:15 p.m. Now they're celebrating horizontally. Want me to keep watching? Brandon typed back, "No, come to the office. We have what we need." That afternoon, while Jacqueline and Christian basked in their perceived victory, Brandon met with the FBI team who'd be attending the gala. "The watermark documents are genius," Special Agent Chen said, reviewing the evidence. "The moment they try to act on this information, we've got them for conspiracy to commit securities fraud." "They already have acted," Blake interjected. "Christian made 3 calls to known Data Vault board members. He's positioning for the acquisition that doesn't exist. Even better. We'll take him at the gala, after your announcement. Maximum impact, minimal flight risk." Agent Chen smiled. "Your wife?" "She'll be there. Probably wearing an $8,000 dress she bought with my credit card. Poetic justice. We'll coordinate with local PD for her arrest. House first, very discreet, after the main event." They ran through logistics, timing, contingencies. By the time they finished, Brandon felt like a director preparing for opening night. Every mark was set, every cue rehearsed. Tomorrow, the curtain would rise on the performance of his life. That evening, Brandon went home to find Jacqueline in their bedroom, trying on gowns. 3 designer dresses lay across their bed like expensive corpses. "Help me choose?" she asked, holding up a black Valentino. "I want to look perfect for your big night." "You always look perfect." The lie came easily now, lubricated by practice and necessity. She beamed, spinning to show the dress's open back. "This one, I think. Classic but sexy. Appropriate for a billion-dollar announcement, don't you think? We're not announcing the acquisition tomorrow." "Oh, I know. Too quick, too casual." "I just mean the funding. That's basically a billion-dollar trajectory, right?" "Right." She chose the black Valentino, which would photograph beautifully in her mugshot. They ordered dinner from El Pinto, sitting on their portal as the sun painted the mountains crimson. Almost like old times if you ignored the FBI surveillance van parked down the street. "Remember our first date?" Jacqueline asked, wine making her nostalgic. "You were so nervous. You knocked over your water glass." "Twice." "Twice!" She laughed, genuine for the first time in months. "I thought you were having a seizure. You made me nervous." "Still do." Something shifted in her expression, vulnerability cracking through her mask. "Brandon, Her phone buzzed. Christian, always Christian, pulling her back to their shared delusion. The moment shattered. "I should take this. Committee stuff." "Of course." She went inside, leaving Brandon alone with the ghosts of better times. Tomorrow night, this would all be over. The house would be empty, the marriage dissolved, the future uncertain but honest. His own phone buzzed. "Emily, final sound check complete. AV team has your presentation locked and loaded. Both versions, the standard funding announcement, and the special encore. Slides full of evidence, betrayal documented in high definition, Christian's insider trading, Jacqueline's theft, their affair laid bare for everyone who'd smiled at their deception." Brandon typed back, "Thank you for everything. That sounds like goodbye. Just the opposite. It's hello to whatever comes next." Inside, Jacqueline's laughter drifted through the windows. Happy, carefree, counting stolen chickens before they hatched. Let her laugh. Let her plan. Let her dream of billions that would never materialize. Tomorrow at 8:47 p.m., after the champagne toasts and congratulations, Brandon would return to the podium for one more announcement. The screens would light up with evidence. The FBI would move in, and two people who thought they'd debugged his life would learn they'd been playing in a honeypot the entire time. Brandon raised his wine to the darkening sky. To final acts and new beginnings. Tomorrow couldn't come fast enough. Friday, June 20th, 2018. 6:47 a.m. Brandon stood in their kitchen, arranging breakfast on the Italian marble tray Jacqueline had bought during their honeymoon in Tuscany. French press coffee, steel-cut oatmeal with berries, sourdough toast with that fancy honey from the farmer's market. The same breakfast he'd made her for 15 years of anniversaries and birthdays and random Tuesdays when he wanted to see her smile. Today felt different. Today was goodbye disguised as good morning. He climbed the stairs, tray balanced, finding Jacqueline still cocooned in Egyptian cotton sheets. Her phone sat charging on the nightstand, probably full of messages from Christian about their imaginary billion-dollar windfall. "Morning, beautiful," Brandon said, setting the tray on the bed. Jacqueline's eyes fluttered open, focusing with the confusion of someone remembering they had secrets to keep. Then she saw the breakfast and her face transformed. "Brandon? What's this?" "Big day. Thought we should start it right." She sat up, hair cascading over bare shoulders, looking so much like the woman he'd married that his chest ached. "You haven't done this in, God, I can't remember how long." "Too long." He poured her coffee, adding the exact amount of cream she preferred. "I've been thinking, after tonight, after the announcement, maybe we should take that vacation." Tahiti sounds perfect. Her eyes widened. "Really? But the company will survive without me for 2 weeks. Emily can handle things." He spread honey on her toast, movements careful and precise. "We need this, Jackie. Time to reconnect." Something flickered across her face, guilt, panic, but she recovered quickly, always did. "That sounds wonderful. I'll look at resorts today." "Already booked one. Overwater bungalow at the St. Regis. Your favorite." "My." Her voice caught. "You remembered." "I remember everything." They ate in companionable silence, the weight of unspoken truths filling the space between them. Jacqueline kept glancing at him, like she was trying to solve an equation that wouldn't balance. "You seem different," she said finally. "How so?" "Lighter, like a weight's been lifted." Brandon smiled, thinking of the FBI agents preparing their warrants, the divorce papers locked in Blake's safe, the presentation that would detonate 2 lives in approximately 14 hours. "Maybe it has. I'm glad." She reached for his hand, fingers trembling slightly. "Brandon, I need to tell you something." Her phone buzzed. Christian's custom ringtone, because of course he had one. Jacqueline's hand twitched toward it, then pulled back. "Take it," Brandon said. "Might be important committee business." She searched his face for sarcasm, found none. "It can wait. This morning is about us." "No, really, take it. I need to shower anyway." He stood, kissing her forehead. "Wear the black Valentino tonight. You look incredible in it." In the shower, Brandon let scalding water pound his shoulders while his wife whispered urgent reassurances to her lover. He could imagine the conversation. Christian panicking about the acquisition, Jacqueline soothing him, both of them counting money that existed only in their criminal conspiracy. By the time he emerged, Jacqueline was dressed and glowing with the particular radiance of a woman who thought she'd won the lottery. "Everything okay?" he asked, toweling his hair. "Perfect. Just some last-minute gala details." She kissed him, quick and guilty. "I need to run a few errands. Hair appointment, nails, the usual. Want to look perfect for your big night?" "Our big night," he corrected. "Right, our night." Another kiss. This one tasting like lies and expensive coffee. "I love you, Brandon. Whatever happens, remember that." After she left, Brandon stood in their bedroom, surveying the remnants of their life together. The vacation photos on her dresser, all from the before times. The jewelry box full of gifts from when he was the only man buying her beautiful things. The wedding album tucked on the shelf, gathering dust like their vows. His phone rang. Emily. "She just pulled into Christian's building," she reported. "Lucas has eyes on them. Let me guess, emergency strategy session about the fake acquisition." "Probably. Blake called. FBI's in position." "Your presentation's loaded on the main system and 2 backups." The hotel AV team has been briefed to lock down the system once it starts. And the other thing? Divorce papers are with Blake. He'll hand them to you at exactly the right moment. Emily paused. You sure you want to do it publicly? On stage? Brandon thought about Jacqueline laughing with Christian at Tamaya. Thought about her forwarding his emails, stealing his money, whispering another man's name in their bed. She made her choices publicly. She can face the consequences the same way. Okay? For what it's worth, I think you're doing the right thing, the brave thing. Feels more like the necessary thing. Sometimes they're the same. Brandon spent the afternoon at the office, finalizing legitimate funding details while monitoring the illegitimate scrambling of his wife and her lover. According to Lucas, Christian had made 17 calls to various contacts, desperately trying to verify the data vault acquisition. Each call added another felony to his eventual indictment. At 4 p.m., Brandon went home to dress. His tuxedo hung in the closet, pressed and perfect. As he adjusted his bow tie, he thought about all the galas he and Jacqueline had attended over the years. Charity functions where she'd sparkled on his arm, company celebrations where she'd charmed investors, holiday parties where they'd danced until the band packed up. Tonight would be their last dance, though she didn't know it yet. His phone buzzed. A text from Jacqueline. On my way home. Can't wait to celebrate your success tonight. So proud of you, baby. Brandon stared at the message, at the casual endearment and heart emoji from a woman who'd spent the afternoon plotting to steal his fictitious billions. The cognitive dissonance was breathtaking. He typed back, "See you soon. Tonight changes everything. I know. So exciting. If she only knew." At 5:30, Jacqueline swept into their bedroom like a hurricane in haute couture. Her hair was styled in an elaborate updo that probably cost more than most car payments. Her makeup was flawless, highlighting the bone structure that had first caught his attention at that Santa Fe gala a lifetime ago. "Zip me?" she asked, backing toward him. Brandon's fingers worked the zipper of the black Valentino, the dress that cost $8,000 of his money to clothe her for another man's pleasure. She shivered at his touch. Cold. Just excited. She turned, adjusting his bow tie with wifely efficiency. "You look handsome. Very CEO about to be billionaire. You look beautiful. Very wife of CEO about to be billionaire." They smiled at each other, conspirators in different plots. The drive to Hotel Albuquerque took 20 minutes that felt like hours. Jacqueline chattered about the guest list, the media coverage, the flowers she'd personally selected for the centerpieces. Brandon made appropriate noises, his mind already on stage, already pushing the button that would end everything. As they pulled up to the valet, Jacqueline grabbed his hand. "Brandon, whatever happens tonight, I want you to know. These 15 years have been the best of my life." He squeezed her fingers, feeling the weight of her wedding ring, the Cartier bracelet Christian had bought her, the lies wrapped around her wrist like shackles. "Mine too," he said, meaning it despite everything. They had been the best years, before they became the worst. The valet opened their doors, and they stepped out into the New Mexico twilight. Photographers snapped pictures the successful tech CEO and his beautiful wife, arriving for their triumph. In 3 hours, those same photographers would capture a very different scene. "Ready?" Jacqueline asked, linking her arm through his. Brandon looked at the hotel entrance, where their future waited like a car crash in slow motion. Inside, 300 guests mingled with champagne and anticipation. FBI agents pretended to be investors. His lawyer stood ready with papers that would end a marriage. His presentation waited on secure servers, a digital bomb built from betrayal and evidence. "Ready," he said, and led his wife into their last dance. The Hotel Albuquerque ballroom had been transformed into a tech mogul's fever dream. LED pillars pulsed with Brandtech's signature blue, holographic projections of neural networks danced across the walls, and 300 of New Mexico's most influential people mingled beneath chandeliers programmed to shift like synapses firing. Brandon stood at the edge of the controlled chaos, watching Jacqueline work the room. She floated between conversations, touching arms, sharing laughs, playing the perfect corporate wife one last time. At 7:15, he spotted Christian entering with his wife Margaret, a thin, nervous woman who looked like she'd rather be anywhere else. "Showtime approaching?" Blake murmured, appearing at Brandon's elbow with practiced stealth. "You good?" "Define good. Functional enough to destroy 2 lives in front of everyone they've been trying to impress?" "That I can do. FBI's in position. Agent Chen is by the bar, pretending to be drunk. 2 more by the exits." Blake sipped his champagne. "Your wife's been busy. She's talked to 6 investors about the exciting developments coming, building anticipation for the fake acquisition." "Perfect. The higher the climb, the harder the fall." Blake clapped his shoulder. "I'll be right side, 3rd row. Signal when you're ready for the papers." Emily materialized with precision timing. "AV's ready. Your presentation's queued, both versions." She lowered her voice. "Christian's at 2 o'clock, heading your way." Brandon turned to find his business partner approaching with the confidence of a man about to collect billions. Up close, Christian Blackwood looked exactly like what he was: successful, distinguished, and completely unaware his world was about to implode. "Brandon!" He extended a hand that had been all over Brandon's wife 12 hours ago. "Exciting night. I hear you have some major announcements planned." "You could say that." Brandon shook the hand, matching his grip. "Glad you could make it." "Wouldn't miss it. Your lovely wife was just telling me about your vacation plans. Tahiti sounds magnificent." "Jacqueline's been full of plans lately." Something flickered in Christian's eyes. "Well, after tonight's announcement, you'll certainly be able to afford any plans you want." "That's the idea." They stood there, predator and prey unclear, until Jacqueline appeared between them like a beautiful buffer. "Are my 2 favorite men getting along?" She linked arms with both, playing a role she'd perfected. "Christian, did Brandon tell you about the new AI protocols? Absolutely groundbreaking." "He's been remarkably tight-lipped, actually." Christian's smile had edges. "But I suppose that's what makes him such a successful CEO, knowing when to keep secrets." "And when to reveal them," Brandon added. "If you'll excuse me, I should check on the presentation." He left them standing together, the husband and the lover, neither knowing they had hours of freedom left. At the tech station, Emily confirmed everything was ready. "Funding announcement runs 12 minutes, then a brief quanda, then the encore performance. Local news is here. Journal, business first, even someone from TechCrunch." Emily's expression was carefully neutral. "This is going to be everywhere by morning." "Good. They wanted to be together. Now they'll be famous together." At 8 o'clock sharp, the lights dimmed and Brandon took the stage. The crowd settled, champagne flutes raised, faces eager. In the 3rd row, he spotted Roberto and Carmen Martinez, here to support their son-in-law's success. His stomach clenched, but there was no stopping now. "Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the future of artificial intelligence." The presentation flowed flawlessly, slides full of metrics and projections, promises of revolution and disruption. Brandon had given versions of this talk 100 times, could do it while calculating revenge trajectories. "I'm pleased to announce that Brandtech has successfully closed our Series B funding round." The number appeared on screen. $40 million, led by Andreessen Horowitz and Sequoia Capital. Applause thundered through the ballroom. Brandon spotted Jacqueline in the crowd, beaming like a woman whose ship had come in. Beside her, Christian calculated his percentage of an imaginary acquisition. "This funding values Brandtech at $500 million and positions us to revolutionize how AI interfaces with human decision-making." He continued through the prepared remarks, building to what everyone thought was the climax. Questions followed softball lobs about market penetration and scaling challenges. Brandon answered on autopilot, his real focus on what came next. "Thank you all for your support," he concluded, to more applause. "But before we celebrate, I have one more announcement. Something that affects not just Brandtech's future, but its present integrity." The crowd quieted, sensing a shift. Brandon clicked his remote, and new slides filled the screen. 6 months ago, we welcomed a new investor, Christian Blackwood, whose strategic guidance has been illuminating. A photo appeared. Christian at his desk, looking every inch the successful venture capitalist. What you don't know is that Mr. Blackwood has been receiving proprietary information about our company, information that allowed him to make remarkably prescient investment decisions. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Christian's face had gone pale. This information came from an inside source, someone with complete access to our development timeline, our acquisition targets, our competitive strategies. Click. A new slide. Jacqueline's email to Christian about the Techstrat valuation. My wife. The ballroom erupted. Gasps, shocked whispers, the crash of someone dropping a champagne flute. Brandon continued, voice steady as his world burned. Jacqueline Chen has been systematically sharing our corporate secrets with Mr. Blackwood, with whom she's been having an affair for the past 4 months. Click. Security footage from Tamaya Resort. Jacqueline and Christian on the terrace, kissing over champagne and diamond earrings. Their relationship has cost our competitors millions through insider trading. It's violated federal securities law. And it's destroyed a marriage I thought was worth saving. Click. Bank statements showing the joint American Express card, the secret accounts, the systematic theft of marital assets. Mr. Blackwood used this information to short-sell our competitors, making approximately $6 million in illegal profits. My wife facilitated this, making her an accomplice to federal crimes. In the crowd, FBI agents moved into position. Christian stood frozen, his wife Margaret swaying beside him. Jacqueline. Brandon couldn't look at Jacqueline. This morning, both parties received fabricated documents about a fictional acquisition. Documents designed to prove their ongoing conspiracy. Click. Photos of Jacqueline handing Christian the watermarked folder. They took the bait. Brandon, stop! Jacqueline's voice cut through the chaos. She pushed toward the stage, designer gown tangling in chairs. Please, let me explain. Explain what? He finally looked at her, this stranger wearing his wife's face. How you stole $500,000. How you shared secrets that weren't yours to share. How you whispered his name in our bed. She stopped like she'd hit glass, tears destroying her perfect makeup. Ladies and gentlemen, Brandon continued, I apologize for this disruption to our celebration. But Brand Tech believes in transparency, even when it's painful. Especially then. Agent Chen approached Christian with 2 other agents flanking. Mr. Blackwood, FBI. You're under arrest for securities fraud, wire fraud, and conspiracy to commit— This is insane! Christian tried to pull away. Brandon, call them off. We can work this out. Like you worked out stealing my company? Like you worked out fucking my wife? The agents cuffed him as Margaret Blackwood fainted into her chair. Cameras flashed, capturing every moment for tomorrow's headlines. In the chaos, Brandon saw Roberto Martinez holding his sobbing wife, their dreams of grandchildren dying in real time. There's one more thing, Brandon said into the microphone, cutting through the pandemonium. Blake? His lawyer approached the stage, climbing the steps with a manila envelope. Brandon took it, hands steady as bedrock. Jacqueline Chen, he said, her name foreign on his tongue. You've been served. He held out the divorce papers as 500 cameras captured the moment. She stared at them, at him, at the wreckage of the life they'd built. How could you? She whispered, close enough now that the microphone caught every word. How could you do this to me? Brandon laughed, sharp and bitter. How could I? That's really your question? I loved you. You loved my money. You loved the lifestyle. You loved the thrill of deceiving someone who trusted you completely. He stepped back from the podium, from her, from all of it. Now you can love the consequences. He walked off stage as the FBI led Christian away, and Jacqueline collapsed into a chair, designer gown puddling around her like spilled ink. The presentation continued playing behind them evidence of betrayal on infinite loop, ensuring everyone understood exactly what had happened in their midst. Brandon didn't stop walking until he reached the parking lot, where the June night air hit like absolution. Behind him, 300 guests grappled with the most explosive tech announcement in New Mexico history. His phone buzzed. Emily. Holy shit, you actually did it. He typed back, is it wrong that I feel nothing? No, that's just the adrenaline. Tomorrow you'll feel everything. Can't wait. But standing there in the parking lot, listening to sirens approaching and cameras clicking and his life reorganizing into whatever came next, Brandon felt something unexpected. Free. The ballroom had transformed from celebration to catastrophe in minutes. 300 guests stood frozen like a tableau of social disaster, champagne flutes dangling from shocked fingers, mouths agape at the digital evidence still cycling on the massive screens. Jacqueline remained in her chair near the stage, a designer-clad island in a sea of scandal. Her perfect makeup ran in rivers down her cheeks, her elaborate updo had partially collapsed, and the $8,000 Valentino might as well have been sackcloth and ashes. "Turn it off!" she screamed at the AV tech, who looked to Emily for guidance. "Turn the fucking thing off!" Emily shook her head slightly. The presentation continued its damning loop. Margaret Blackwood had been revived and was now shrieking at the FBI agents restraining her husband. "You don't understand. He's Christian Blackwood. He owns half this city. I'll have your badges." "Ma'am, please step back," Agent Chen said with practiced calm while Christian was led away. The venture capitalist's silver hair was mussed, his perfect image shattered. He kept looking back at Jacqueline with something between rage and disbelief. "This is your fault." Margaret rounded on Jacqueline, her thin face twisted with fury. "You seduced him! You destroyed my family!" "I didn't." Jacqueline started to stand, wobbled on her designer heels. 23 years of marriage, 3 children who now have to live with this shame. Margaret lunged forward, held back only by 2 guests. "You're nothing but a gold-digging whore." The slap echoed through the ballroom like a gunshot. Margaret's hand left a perfect red print on Jacqueline's cheek, visible even through the runny makeup. "Enough!" Roberto Martinez pushed through the crowd, his 70-year-old frame radiating patriarchal authority. "Margaret, go home, Jacqueline." His voice broke. "Mija, what have you done?" "Papa, I can explain." Explain what? How you betrayed your husband, how you shamed our family. How you threw away everything for what money? Jewels? Roberto's eyes, so like his daughter's, filled with tears. "Your mother is in the bathroom, crying too hard to stand. Is that what you wanted to explain?" "It wasn't supposed to happen like this," Jacqueline whispered. "No? How was it supposed to happen? Were you going to leave Brandon quietly after stealing his money? Run away with your—" He couldn't say the word. "That man?" "I don't know." The scream ripped from Jacqueline's throat. "I don't know, okay? It just happened." "Affairs don't just happen," Emily said, stepping forward with cold precision. "They require choices, hundreds of small betrayals adding up to this moment. You don't understand. I understand perfectly. I watched you lie to him every day. Watched you take his calls while you were with another man. Watched you spend his money on lingerie for someone else's bed." Emily's voice could have frozen helium. "I understand you're a parasite who got caught. How dare you? How dare I? I'm not the one who committed federal crimes for a man who'll throw you under the bus to save himself." As if summoned by the prophecy, Blake approached with papers. "Mrs. Chen, I'm Mr. Chen's attorney. You'll want to contact your own counsel immediately. The FBI will likely arrest you within the hour." "Arrest?" The word came out as a squeak. "But I didn't." "You facilitated insider trading. You stole marital assets. You participated in corporate espionage." Blake's smile was all teeth. "I'd start thinking about plea bargains if I were you." The cameras hadn't stopped clicking. Every moment of Jacqueline's public destruction was being documented, uploaded, shared. Tomorrow, her face would be on every business page, every gossip site, every cautionary tale about greed and betrayal. "Where's Brandon?" she asked suddenly, looking around wildly. "I need to talk to him. He'll listen. He always listens." "He's gone," Lucas said, appearing from the crowd. "Left right after serving you the papers. Said he'd seen enough." "But I need to explain. I need to tell him—" "Tell him what?" Lucas's voice was granite. "That you're sorry? That it didn't mean anything? That you love him?" He laughed bitterly. "I've been his friend for 30 years. I watched you destroy him piece by piece. There's nothing you can say that'll undo that." Jacqueline crumpled, designer gown pooling around her like black water. The strong, confident woman who'd worked the room an hour ago was gone, replaced by someone small and broken and utterly alone. "I need to go home," she whispered. "About that." Blake interjected. "The locks have been changed. Your access codes have been revoked. Your personal belongings will be delivered to an address of your choosing within 48 hours. But that's my house. Purchased with Mr. Chen's premarital assets and maintained with his income. You have no claim to it." Blake checked his phone. "Also, your credit cards have been frozen, your access to joint accounts revoked, and your Mercedes will be repossessed within the hour. I'd arrange alternative transportation." The hits kept coming, each one stripping away another layer of the life she'd taken for granted. Around them, guests were beginning to leave, unable to stomach more of the carnage. But enough remained, whispering behind hands, recording every moment of her downfall. "Jacqueline Martinez?" A new voice. Two Albuquerque police officers approached. "We need you to come with us. You're not under arrest at this time, but the FBI wants to question you about your involvement with Christian Blackwood." "I need a lawyer," she said faintly. "That would be advisable, ma'am. Will you come voluntarily, or do we need to arrest you?" She stood on shaking legs, designer heels clicking on marble as she walked through a gauntlet of people she'd tried so hard to impress. Former friends avoided eye contact. Committee members she'd served with turned their backs. The society she'd climbed so carefully to enter expelled her with surgical precision. At the door, she turned back one last time. The presentation had finally stopped, leaving only Brandtech's logo on the screens. The company she'd helped build, then tried to steal. The life she'd destroyed for diamonds and champagne, and a man who was already calculating how to minimize his sentence. "Tell Brandon." She started, then stopped. What was there to tell? That she was sorry? That she'd loved him once? That she'd thrown it all away for the attention of a silver-haired predator who made her feel special? "Tell him yourself," Emily said coldly. "At the divorce proceedings." The officers led her away, past the photographers, past the valet stand where her Mercedes sat with a repossession notice on the windshield, past the life she'd built on lies and betrayal. Inside, Roberto Martinez sat with his wife, both aged a decade in an hour. Their daughter's shame would follow them now, whispered at church, discussed at family gatherings, a permanent stain on their golden years. "Did we fail her?" Carmen asked through tears. "Did we raise her wrong?" "We raised her with values," Roberto said heavily. "She chose to abandon them." Miles away, Brandon sat in his office, one monitor showing his company's stock price, up 12% on news of the funding, another showing the social media explosion of his revelation. Revenge Gala was already trending. Videos of the announcement had gone viral. His phone buzzed with calls from reporters, investors, friends, enemies, vultures circling the carrion of his marriage. He ignored them all, pouring 3 fingers of scotch and standing at his window. Somewhere in the city, Jacqueline was being questioned by federal agents. Somewhere, Christian was calling lawyers and moving money. Somewhere, 300 guests were still processing what they'd witnessed. But Brandon felt nothing except the peculiar lightness of a man who'd cut away gangrene before it reached his heart. Tomorrow would bring lawyers and paperwork, and the exhausting machinery of divorce. Tonight he was free. His phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number, probably a reporter. He almost deleted it, then saw the preview. From Roberto. "Please." He opened it. "I'm sorry for what my daughter became. You deserved better. You always did." Brandon stared at the message from his father-in-law, former father-in-law, and felt the first crack in his armor. Not for Jacqueline, not for the marriage, but for the collateral damage. Good people hurt by proximity to bad choices. He typed back, "Not your fault. Take care of Carmen. You take care of yourself, mijo. The best revenge is a life well lived." Brandon raised his scotch to the window, to the city lights, to whatever came next. The storm had been unleashed, the damage catastrophic but necessary. Now came the harder part, building something new from the wreckage. But that was tomorrow's problem. Tonight, he'd destroyed 2 lives that had tried to destroy his, and despite everything, he slept better than he had in months. The aftermath played out in real time on Brandon's phone as he stood in the hotel parking lot. Twitter had exploded. Revenge Gala competed with Brandtech drama for trending supremacy. Someone had already created a meme from Jacqueline's shocked face when the first slide appeared. "Mr. Chen?" Brandon turned to find Agent Chen approaching, her cocktail dress incongruous with the federal badge now displayed. Hell of a presentation, she said. We've got Blackwood in custody. Your ex-wife is being questioned but not arrested. Yet. Will she be? Depends on what Blackwood says. These guys always flip to save themselves. She studied him with professional curiosity. You okay? That couldn't have been easy. Ask me in a year. Fair enough. We'll need you to come in Monday for a full statement. Bring your lawyer. She handed him a card. And Mr. Chen, what you did tonight took balls. Most people would have handled it quietly. Most people weren't betrayed so publicly. She nodded and walked away, leaving Brandon alone with the desert night and the sound of his life reorganizing itself. His phone buzzed constantly, calls, texts, emails from everyone who'd ever known him. He turned it off, craving silence more than connection. Brandon! Emily emerged from the hotel, having somehow acquired his keys and jacket. Behind her, Lucas carried a box that Brandon recognized as the contents of his office bar. Figured you might not want to go back in, Lucas said, hefting the box. Also, the board wants an emergency meeting tomorrow, but I told them to fuck off until Monday. Language, Emily chided, then handed Brandon his jacket. Blake says Jacqueline's being released to her sister. Apparently, Anna flew in from Phoenix when she saw the news. I thought Anna was in Cabo. She was. Chartered a flight back when Twitter exploded. Emily's expression softened marginally. Her family's in shock. They had no idea. Brandon thought of Roberto and Carmen, of Sunday dinners and holiday celebrations, of the extended family he'd lost along with his marriage. Send them flowers. From me. Something that says, sorry your daughter's a criminal, but I still care about you. I'll find an appropriate arrangement. They stood in the parking lot, an odd trio bonded by loyalty and catastrophe. Inside the hotel, Brandon's life was being dissected by everyone who'd witnessed its implosion. Outside, the June night offered desert clarity and the promise of eventual peace. What now? Lucas asked. Now? I go home to my empty house, drink your expensive scotch, and try to figure out who I am without her. You're Brandon fucking Chen, Emily said firmly. You built a $500 million company from nothing. You exposed corporate espionage and saved your investors millions. You stood on that stage and showed everyone what integrity looks like. That what it looked like? Felt more like revenge. Sometimes they're the same thing. Lucas loaded the box into Brandon's Tesla. Want company? We could order pizza, get drunk, talk shit about your ex. Thanks, but no. I need to process this alone. Fair enough, but we're here when you're ready. They left separately, Emily and Lucas to decompress their own trauma of watching their boss publicly destroy his life, Brandon to face the home that would never again echo with Jacqueline's laughter or lies. The house felt different when he entered. Same furniture, same art, same expensive emptiness, but the air itself had changed. The persistent weight of deception had lifted, leaving space for whatever came next. Brandon poured scotch from Lucas's rescued bottle and wandered the rooms like a ghost, inventorying his haunting grounds. Their bedroom, where she'd whispered another man's name. The kitchen, where she'd planned her betrayals over morning coffee. His office, where he'd discovered the truth that set him free. His phone, reluctantly turned back on, showed 847 missed calls and too many texts to count. One stood out from David Park, lead board member. Brutal, but necessary. The board stands behind you. Take the weekend. We'll handle the media. Another from his sister in California. Saw the news. Flying out tomorrow. Don't argue. A third from an unknown number. Mr. Chen, I'm Jennifer Walsh from the Wall Street Journal. I'd like to discuss your unprecedented handling of corporate espionage for a feature piece. Your story could help other executives facing similar betrayals. Brandon deleted the reporter's message but saved his sister's. He'd need family in the coming days. Someone who'd known him before Jacqueline, who could remind him who that person was. At 2 a.m., he found himself in Jacqueline's closet, surveying the designer goods purchased with his money for another man's pleasure. The waste of it all, not just money, but time, trust, the future they'd planned. He was reaching for a trash bag when his phone rang. The caller ID showed a number he didn't recognize, but something made him answer. Brandon? It's Anna. Jacqueline's sister sounded exhausted, wrung out, nothing like the party girl who posted margaritas from Cabo. Anna. I'm at my parents' house with Jackie. She's... A pause, the sound of someone choosing words carefully. She's broken, Brandon. I've never seen her like this. What do you want me to say? That I'm sorry? That I forgive her? No, I want to apologize. We all saw signs, the spending, the distance, the lies, but nobody said anything. We enabled her by staying silent. It wasn't your job to save my marriage. Maybe not, but she's my sister, and I should have called her on her bullshit. Anna's voice hardened. For what it's worth, I think you did the right thing, the brave thing. She needed consequences. Tell that to your parents. I have. They're devastated, but not at you, at her, at themselves for raising someone capable of this. Another pause. She wants to talk to you. No. I told her you'd say that. She's convinced she can explain, make you understand. I told her there's no explaining betrayal. You're a good sister, Anna. I'm trying to be. Take care, Brandon. You deserve better. So everyone keeps telling me. After they hung up, Brandon continued his survey of Jacqueline's closet. So many beautiful things, so many lies wrapped in silk and leather. On impulse, he grabbed his phone and scrolled to a contact he hadn't used in years. Dress for success, the voicemail greeted him. Providing professional attire for women entering the workforce. Please leave a message. This is Brandon Chen. I have a donation, several dozen designer pieces, all high-end. I can deliver them Monday. He'd give away every reminder, transform her betrayal into someone else's fresh start. It felt like coding taking corrupted data and repurposing it into something functional. By dawn, he'd filled 12 garbage bags with clothes, shoes, and accessories. The closet stood empty, awaiting whatever came next, like him. Brandon showered off the night's adrenaline and exhaustion, then stood on his portal as the sun crested the Sandias. The same view he'd shared with Jacqueline countless mornings, now his alone. His phone buzzed. Emily, check the news. He pulled up the Journal's website. The headline screamed, Tech CEO exposes wife's affair and corporate espionage at funding gala. Below, a photo of him at the podium, face carved from stone as he revealed the truth to 300 guests. The article was thorough, including quotes from attendees, analysts speculating on Brandtech's future, and a note that Christian Blackwood's attorney had declined comment. Near the end, a single line. Jacqueline Chen could not be reached for comment and is believed to be staying with family. Brandon closed the browser and set down his phone. The news cycle would feast on this for days, maybe weeks. Then something else would explode, and his public destruction of 2 lives would become just another cautionary tale in the annals of tech drama. But for now, in the silence of his empty house, Brandon Chen allowed himself a moment of satisfaction. He'd been betrayed, humiliated, and robbed by the person he'd trusted most. But instead of crumbling, he'd architected a revenge so complete that it would be studied in both business schools and divorce courts. The storm had been unleashed, the damage assessed, the guilty punished. Now came the harder part, learning to live in the aftermath. But that was tomorrow's problem. Today, he'd watch the sun rise over the mountains and remember what it felt like to breathe without the weight of lies on his chest. It felt like freedom. It felt like beginning again. The Bernalillo County Courthouse had seen its share of dramatic divorces, but the Chen versus Chen proceedings drew unprecedented attention. 6 weeks after the gala, Brandon sat in a conference room that smelled like old paper and broken promises, watching his marriage dissolve with the efficiency of acid on metal. My client agrees to all terms, Jacqueline's attorney said, shuffling papers with the resignation of a man who knew he'd lost before beginning. Personal belongings, the 2016 Mercedes, and the contents of her individual checking account. $47.18, Blake noted dryly. How generous. Jacqueline sat across the table, a shadow of her former self. The designer clothes were gone, replaced by a simple sundress that might have come from Target. Her face, without its armor of expensive makeup, looked younger and infinitely sadder. Is that all? Judge Morrison asked, clearly eager to move past this media circus. There's the matter of Miss Chen's legal situation, her attorney added carefully. She's cooperating fully with federal authorities regarding Mr. Blackwood's activities. Throwing him under the bus, Blake translated. How predictable. Your client destroyed 2 lives very publicly, Jacqueline's attorney shot back. Perhaps we could avoid further commentary. My client revealed the truth. What happened after was consequence, not cruelty. Brandon watched this tennis match of legal barbs with detachment. 6 weeks of therapy had given him the gift of distance, the ability to see Jacqueline as a person who'd made catastrophic choices rather than a monster who'd destroyed his life. Brandon? He looked up to find her staring at him, eyes pleading for something: forgiveness, understanding, a time machine. What? I need you to know I loved you. Despite everything, I did love you. I know, he said simply. You just loved yourself more. The paperwork was signed with the mechanical precision of ending any other contract. 15 years dissolved in 15 minutes. When they finished, Jacqueline stood to leave, then paused. For what it's worth, Christian's getting 5 years, federal prison. His wife took everything in their divorce: the houses, the investments, even his stake in your company. I know. He blames me, says I seduced him, entrapped him. She laughed bitterly. Funny how quickly I love you becomes, it's her fault. Sounds familiar. She flinched but nodded. I suppose I deserve that. You deserve whatever peace you can find, Jacqueline. Just find it away from me. She left without another word, designer heels replaced by sensible flats that whispered against courthouse linoleum. Brandon watched her go, waiting for some surge of emotion: triumph, sadness, anything. But there was only relief, clean and simple as debugged code. The jewelry? Blake asked, pulling him back to business. Women's shelter, like we discussed. Everything except Brandon pulled out a small box. This was my grandmother's. Jacqueline never wore it. Said it was too simple. The ring was indeed simple, a thin gold band with a single small diamond, the kind of ring bought with love instead of loans. Brandon pocketed it, thinking he might give it to someone someday who'd appreciate its history over its appraisal value. That afternoon, Brandon met with the FBI for the last time. Agent Chen, no relation, despite the name laid out the case with satisfying thoroughness. Blackwood pled guilty to securities fraud, wire fraud, and conspiracy. 5 years federal, 3 years probation, lifetime ban from financial markets. She smiled with professional satisfaction. Your wife's cooperation was instrumental. Ex-wife. Right, ex-wife. She won't face charges, but she's been flagged by the SEC. She'll never work in finance or tech again. What about the money she stole? Recovered and returned to your accounts, minus what she spent. About $300,000 total loss. $300,000 to destroy a marriage. Brandon wondered what the price per betrayal worked out to, then decided he didn't want to know. The other investors Blackwood defrauded are grateful, Agent Chen continued. Your exposure saved them millions in potential losses. Happy to help. One more thing. She slid a folder across the table. Blackwood's assets are being liquidated. His 8% of Brand Tech is available if you want to buy it back. Brandon looked at the numbers. $40 million for shares that would be worth 10 times that in 5 years. I'll take it. Thought you might. Poetic justice, buying your company back with his prison sentence. After leaving the FBI office, Brandon drove to the women's shelter in the South Valley. The director, Maria Gonzalez, met him at the door with the careful enthusiasm of someone used to promises that evaporated. Mr. Chen, thank you for calling. We don't often get donations of this caliber. He handed her the boxes: Cartier, Tiffany, Harry Winston, hundreds of thousands in jewelry that had decorated a liar. Everything's authenticated. Sell it, auction it, whatever helps most. Maria opened one box, gasping at the diamond earrings Christian had given Jacqueline at Tamaya. This is incredibly generous. It's necessary, Brandon corrected. Beauty from ashes and all that. Would you like a receipt? For taxes? No need. Some donations are their own reward. He left her standing in the doorway. Boxes of glittering betrayal transformed into hope for women starting over. It felt like good code taking something broken and making it functional. That evening, Brandon stood in his office as sunset painted the sandiest crimson. Brandtech's stock price glowed on one monitor, up 30% since the scandal. Apparently, investors appreciated a CEO who handled problems decisively, even personal ones. His phone buzzed. Emily. Christian's facility assignment came through. Minimum security in Colorado. He'll be making license plates and regretting his life choices. Good. What about Jacqueline? Confirmed move to Phoenix. LinkedIn shows she's seeking new opportunities, which is code for blacklisted everywhere that matters. Let it go, Em. She's not our problem anymore. You're right. Want to grab a drink? Lucas is buying. Rain check. Tonight I'm celebrating my freedom with scotch and silence. Fair enough, but we're taking you out this weekend. No arguments. Brandon smiled, the expression still feeling new on his face. 6 weeks since the gala, and he was still learning how to be single, how to trust, how to build a life without checking for hidden betrayals. His therapist said it would take time. That trauma rewired the brain, made you see threats where none existed. But she also said he was doing remarkably well for a man who'd publicly destroyed his life to save it. The doorbell interrupted his contemplation. Brandon found a delivery driver holding an envelope marked personal and confidential. Inside, expensive stationery and familiar handwriting. Brandon, by the time you read this, I'll be serving my sentence. 5 years to think about how greed destroyed everything worthwhile in my life. I wanted to write, to apologize, to try explaining the inexplicable. I targeted your company because you threatened my empire. I pursued Jacqueline because she had access, but somewhere in the manipulation I fell for her. Or maybe I just fell for the thrill of stealing another man's wife. Prison gives you time to question everything. She loved you. Even while betraying you, she loved you. I know because she talked about you constantly, your brilliance, your drive, your terrible jokes. It drove me crazy, being second in her heart even as I held her body. I'm not asking forgiveness. Just wanted you to know that you won. Not just legally or financially, but completely. You kept your integrity while we lost our souls. Christian Blackwood, FCI Englewood Brandon read it twice, then fed it to his shredder without ceremony. Christian's prison revelations meant nothing. Jacqueline's conflicted heart meant less. They'd made choices, faced consequences. End of code. Outside, Albuquerque glittered like a circuit board, all light and possibility. Somewhere in Phoenix, Jacqueline was starting over with $47 and a reputation in ruins. Somewhere in Colorado, Christian was learning that orange wasn't his color. And here in his office, Brandon Chen was free. The jewelry was gone, the divorce final, the company secured. Justice had been served at exactly the right temperature, cold, public, and permanent. Tomorrow, he'd start rebuilding. Tonight, he'd savor the silence of a life without lies. It sounded like peace. Phoenix in August was hell with aspirations. The thermometer outside Sky Harbor car rental read 117 degrees, but inside the air conditioning struggled against the heat of impatient travelers and broken dreams. Jacqueline Martinez, she'd legally dropped the Chen stood behind the counter in her polyester uniform, smile as plastic as her name tag. I reserved a luxury sedan, the businessman barked, sweat already beading despite the AC. This confirmation clearly shows, I apologize, sir, but we're completely out of luxury vehicles. I can offer you a free upgrade to our premium SUV category. I don't want an SUV. I want what I reserved. 6 months ago, she would have been the one complaining, demanding managers, threatening reviews. Now she was the person absorbing anger, minimum wage plus commission, living in Anna's guest room and eating ramen like she was 22 again. I understand your frustration. Let me see what else might be available. She typed meaninglessly, knowing nothing would change but needing the performance. This was her life now, performance without purpose, smile without soul, existence without living. Forget it, the man snapped. I'll go to Hertz. He stormed off, leaving Jacqueline to reset her smile for the next disappointed customer. Her supervisor, Brenda, 23 years old with community college ambitions, wandered over. You've got to sell harder, Jackie. Push the insurance, the GPS, the prepaid gas. Your numbers are way below target. It's Jacqueline, and I'm trying. Try harder. This isn't some corporate job where you can coast. Brenda snapped her gum, a habit that made Jacqueline fantasize about violence. Next customer's yours. Make it count. The next customer was a young couple, honeymooners from the look of their matched luggage and intertwined hands. Jacqueline pushed through her spiel, watching them laugh at private jokes and steal kisses when they thought she wasn't looking. She'd been that girl once, believed in forever, in love, conquering all, in men who promised the world. Now she was 42, living on her sister's charity, wearing polyester that made her skin itch, and going home to microwave dinners and wine that came in boxes. "Ma'am? The keys?" "Oh, yes, sorry." She handed over the keys to their economy compact, the only honeymoon car they could afford. "Enjoy Phoenix." Her phone buzzed Anna, checking in like she did every day at 2 p.m. "How's work? Surviving. Mom called. She wants you to come for dinner Sunday. I can't face them. You'll have to eventually." "Not yet." Anna didn't push. She'd been surprisingly supportive, considering Jacqueline's scandal had splashed across Phoenix society pages, too. The Martinez family's golden daughter, revealed as a thief and adulteress. Anna's own marriage had suffered. Her husband was tired of the whispers at his law firm. "Jackie. Customer." "It's Jacqueline," she muttered. But Brenda was already harassing someone else about extended warranties. The afternoon crawled by in a haze of complaints and carbon copies. By 5, Phoenix's heat had reached its daily crescendo, making the parking lot shimmer like water. Jacqueline's ancient Honda, the Mercedes, long since repossessed, barely started, AC wheezing asthmatically. Her phone rang as she sat in traffic on I-10. Unknown number, but she answered anyway. These days, it could be a job interview. She'd applied everywhere, from marketing firms to retail stores, watching her aspirations shrink with each rejection. "Jacqueline Chen? Martinez. It's Martinez now." "Right. This is Patricia Blackwood, Christian's daughter." Jacqueline's hands tightened on the wheel. "What do you want?" "To tell you that you destroyed my family. My mother had a nervous breakdown. My brothers won't speak to our father. I had to change schools because everyone knew." "Patricia. He writes me letters from prison. Wants me to forgive him. Says you seduced him, made him crazy." The girl's voice broke. "But I saw those photos from your husband's presentation. You didn't make him do anything. You were both just selfish." "You're right. What else could she say?" "We were selfish. I'm sorry." Sorry doesn't fix anything. Sorry doesn't make my mom stop crying or my brothers come home for Christmas. Sorry is just a word selfish people use when consequences find them. The line went dead. Jacqueline drove the rest of the way to Anna's house in silence, Patricia's words echoing. Selfish. It was such a small word for such devastating choices. Anna's house in Scottsdale was everything Jacqueline had once aspired to: tasteful, elegant, filled with the careful beauty of a life well lived. She entered through the garage, avoiding the front door where neighbors might see Phoenix's most infamous homewrecker coming home from her minimum-wage job. "Rough day?" Anna asked, not looking up from chopping vegetables for dinner. "Christian's daughter called to tell me I destroyed her family." "You did. Thanks for the support." "You want support? Go to therapy. You want honesty? That's what sisters are for." Anna slid a glass of wine across the counter, decent wine, not the boxed stuff Jacqueline bought. "You made choices. Those choices had consequences. Now you live with them." "I know that. God, don't you think I know that? I think about it every morning when I put on this fucking polyester. Every time someone recognizes me and whispers. Every night when I lie in your guest bed and remember what I had. What you threw away. Yes, fine. What I threw away. For what? For a man who blamed me the second things got hard. For jewelry Brandon donated to charity. For 5 minutes of feeling special." Anna stopped chopping, studying her sister with the clinical detachment of a surgeon. "You want to know what I think? Not really. You got exactly what you deserved, not because you had an affair, people make mistakes, but because you were cruel about it. You stole from Brandon while sleeping in his bed. You shared his secrets while wearing his ring. You planned your escape while he planned your anniversary trips. I didn't mean, yes, you did. Every lie was a choice. Every betrayal was deliberate." Anna resumed chopping with unnecessary force. "The worst part? He would have given you a generous divorce. But you had to be greedy. Had to have it all. Are you done? Almost. One more thing: I love you because you're my sister. But I don't like who you became. And until you figure out why you became her, you'll keep destroying everything you touch." They ate dinner in silence, sisters bound by blood and divided by choices. Later, Jacqueline sat in the guest room, laptop open to job sites that would never call back. Her LinkedIn showed 47 connections, down from 500. Her email held only spam and bills she couldn't pay. On impulse, she typed Brandon's name into Google. The results were a monument to success. Brandtech's soaring valuation, his keynote at Tech Summit, photos of him smiling at industry events. He looked good, healthier, happier, free. One recent article caught her eye. Brandon Chen donates $5 million to Women in Tech Initiative. The photo showed him at a podium, confident and composed. In the audience, she spotted Emily, still loyal, still protective of the man Jacqueline had betrayed. She closed the laptop and lay in the dark, listening to Phoenix traffic and remembering Albuquerque's silence. Somewhere in Colorado, Christian was making license plates and writing letters no one wanted to read. Somewhere in New Mexico, Brandon was building empires and healing wounds. And here in a Scottsdale guest room, Jacqueline Martinez faced the hardest truth of all. She'd had everything and thrown it away for nothing. No dramatic redemption was coming, no last-minute reprieve. Just years of polyester uniforms and boxed wine, and the knowledge that every misery was earned. Her phone buzzed. Brenda, because of course, you're on early shift tomorrow, 6 a.m., don't be late. Jacqueline set her alarm and closed her eyes, dreaming of a life where she'd chosen differently. But dreams were all she had left, and even those tasted like ashes. The ranch in Corrales sprawled across 15 acres of cottonwood bosque and open pasture. Nothing like the architectural showpiece in the foothills. Brandon had bought it on impulse 6 months after the divorce, drawn by its simplicity and distance from everything that reminded him of before. "Easy, Cisco," he murmured to the bay quarter horse, running a brush along the animal's flank. "Just a few more minutes." The horse nickered softly, leaning into the grooming. Brandon had discovered riding by accident. Emily had suggested it as stress relief, probably expecting him to try once and quit. Instead, he'd found peace in the routine. Dawn rides along the Rio Grande, the rhythm of hoofbeats, the absolute present-tense existence of human and horse navigating the world together. "You spoil that animal," Lucas observed from the stable door, coffee mug in hand. "Saturday morning and you're here, why?" "Because you've been hermiting again. 3 weeks since you came to poker night. The guys are starting to think you've replaced us with horses. Horses are simpler. They don't embezzle or lie or fuck your business partners." Fair point. Lucas settled onto a hay bale. But they also don't bring beer or tell terrible jokes or stop you from becoming a weird horse guy who talks to animals. "I'm not weird. And Cisco's an excellent conversationalist." Brandon. He set down the brush, recognizing Lucas's serious tone. "What?" "It's been a year. You've done the therapy, the soul-searching, the rebuilding. Brandtech's worth $1 billion. You've got this beautiful ranch. You're literally saving young entrepreneurs with your mentorship program." Lucas paused. "But when's the last time you went on a date?" "I'm not ready." "Bullshit. You're scared." Which is understandable, but also not sustainable. You can't spend the rest of your life trusting only horses and employees. Brandon led Cisco to his stall, buying time. The truth was, Lucas was right. He'd rebuilt everything except his capacity for romantic trust. The thought of dating felt like volunteering for potential betrayal. "She did a number on me," he said finally. "She did. But you're not the same man who missed the signs. You've learned, grown, gotten scary good at reading people." Lucas stood, brushing hay off his jeans. "Plus, your bullshit detector is now military grade." "Is this an intervention? This is a friend saying you're too good a man to waste on horses and code. Come to poker next week. Bring a date." "I don't have a date." "Then get one." "Jesus, Brandon, you're a billionaire tech CEO with a full head of hair and your own teeth. It's not that hard." After Lucas left, Brandon saddled Cisco for their morning ride. The bosque was peaceful, dappled sunlight through cottonwoods, the Rio Grande running low but steady. Out here, he could think without the noise of expectation or history. A year. Lucas was right about the timeline, wrong about the readiness. Brandon had done the work therapy twice a week for months, EMDR for the trauma, cognitive behavioral therapy for the trust issues. Dr. Rosenberg said he'd made remarkable progress, that his ability to process and grow from trauma was exceptional. But knowing you're healed and feeling it were different programs entirely. His phone buzzed as he returned to the stable. Emily, because she had no respect for weekends. Tech conference next week in SF. You're keynoting Thursday, panel Friday. Already booked your flights. Do I have a choice? You literally pay me to make sure you don't have choices about these things. Also, Jennifer Walsh from WSJ will be there. Still wants that interview. Still not interested. I'll politely decline. Again. Also, your mentee Miguel is waiting in your office. Kid drove out from ABQ to see you. Brandon sighed but smiled. Miguel Torres was 23, brilliant, and building an AI startup from his family's garage in the South Valley. He reminded Brandon of himself at that age, hungry, naive, convinced code could solve everything. He found Miguel in the ranch's converted barn office, staring at the wall of whiteboards covered in algorithms and architecture diagrams. "This is insane," Miguel said without preamble. "Is this the neural net design for Project Saturn? Pieces of it. The full design would need a bigger barn." Brandon grabbed water from the mini-fridge. "What brings you out here, besides snooping on proprietary code?" "I fucked up." Miguel slumped into a chair. "Remember that investor I was courting? Stevenson? The one who promised 50,000? Yeah, except he wants 51% for it. Controlling interest. Says I'm too young to run my own company." Brandon settled behind his desk, studying the kid. Brilliant coder, terrible at reading people exactly like Brandon before Jacqueline taught him the price of naivety. "What do you think?" he asked. "I think I need the money, but giving up control." Miguel ran his hands through his hair. "How do I know he won't screw me?" "You don't, but you can protect yourself. Structure the deal right, maintain board control, vest his shares over time." Brandon pulled up a template on his monitor. "More importantly, trust your gut. Does Stevenson feel like a partner or a predator? Honestly, predator. He looks at my code like he's already counting the money he'll make selling it. Then you have your answer. But the money will come from someone else. Someone who sees you as an investment, not a meal." Brandon spun the monitor toward Miguel. "Look at this list. 12 investors who focus on young founders. I'll make introductions, but you do the pitching." Miguel's eyes widened. "You do that? That's literally why you're in my mentorship program, to keep you from making the mistakes I made." They spent 2 hours reviewing pitch strategies, refining Miguel's deck, role-playing tough questions. By the time the kid left, he looked less like prey and more like a young predator learning his own power. Brandon walked him out, pausing by the paddock where Cisco grazed. "Nice horse," Miguel said. "You ride?" "Every morning. Helps me think." "My grandfather had horses. Used to say they were better judges of character than people." "Smart man." "Yeah." Miguel hesitated. "Can I ask you something personal?" "Shoot." "Do you regret it? The whole public divorce thing? Everyone in tech knows the story." Brandon considered the question, watching Cisco crop grass in the afternoon sun. "I regret that it was necessary. I regret trusting someone who didn't deserve it. But the exposure itself? No. Secrets are like bad code, better to debug them publicly than let them corrupt the system. Even though it cost you, especially because it cost me. The price taught me the value." Miguel nodded, understanding in the way only another coder could. After he left, Brandon stood by the paddock, thinking about trust and betrayal and the long road between them. His phone rang. Unknown number, but he answered anyway. "Mr. Chen? This is Sarah Chen, no relation, I checked. I'm organizing the medical AI panel for next week's conference. I know you're keynoting, but would you consider joining our discussion on ethical implementation?" Her voice was warm, professional, with a hint of humor at the shared surname. Brandon found himself agreeing before he'd consciously decided. "Excellent. I'll email you the details. And Mr. Chen? I've followed your work since before. Well, before last year's excitement, your integrity in both business and personal matters is admirable." After she hung up, Brandon realized he was smiling. Not the practiced smile of business or the polite smile of society, but something genuine and unexpected. Maybe Lucas was right. Maybe it was time to trust someone besides horses and mentees. Or maybe he'd just agreed to a panel because a woman with a nice voice asked politely. Either way, it was progress. That evening, Brandon rode Cisco along the river as sunset painted the sandiest purple. A year ago, he'd been drowning in betrayal and fury. Now he was here healing, mentoring, building something better from the ashes. The journey wasn't complete. Might never be. But for the first time since that horrible night when Jacqueline whispered another man's name, Brandon felt something besides anger or emptiness. He felt possibility, and that was enough to keep riding toward whatever came next. 2 years later, San Francisco Medical Technology Summit. The problem with AI in healthcare isn't capability, it's trust, Dr. Sarah Chen said from the podium, her passion illuminating every word. We can build systems that diagnose with superhuman accuracy, but if doctors don't trust them and patients fear them, we've just created very expensive paperweights. Brandon watched from the back of the conference room, ostensibly reviewing his own presentation, but actually mesmerized by the woman who'd slowly, carefully, become essential to his life. They'd started with that panel discussion a year ago, bonding over shared surnames and divergent approaches to medical AI. Coffee had followed, then dinner, then long walks debating ethics and algorithms. Sarah had been patient with his walls, respectful of his scars, never pushing for more than he could give. Trust, she continued, is built through transparency, consistency, and respect for human judgment. Sound familiar, Brandon? The audience turned to look at him, and he raised his coffee cup in acknowledgement. Stealing my material, Dr. Chen? Improving it, she shot back, earning laughs. Mr. Chen's approach to AI transparency at Brand Tech has become the gold standard, even if it took a rather dramatic demonstration to prove its value. More laughs, comfortable now. The scandal was old news, reduced to a cautionary tale and conference joke. Brandon had learned to lean into it rather than hide from it. After her talk, they met for lunch at a quiet restaurant overlooking the bay. Sarah had changed from her presentation suit to jeans and a Berkeley sweatshirt, the formal doctor replaced by the woman who'd beaten him at pool last Tuesday. Good talk, he said. I especially liked the part where you stole my intellectual property. Our intellectual property. That framework came from our third date, remember? The one where you spent 2 hours explaining trust algorithms while I was trying to be romantic. Was that a date? I thought it was a consultation. Brandon Chen, are you admitting you couldn't tell when a woman was interested in you? Recent history suggests that's exactly my problem. The joke landed softer than it might have a year ago. Sarah had heard the whole story, not the public version, but the real one, told over months of careful revelation. She knew about Jacqueline's whispered betrayal, about the Cartier bracelet, about the morning Brandon made breakfast for the last time. Hey, she said, reaching across the table. That was then. This is now. I know. He squeezed her hand. Best upgrade I ever debugged. Did you just compare our relationship to code? Romantic, right? Impossibly. How do I resist such sweet talk? They walked after lunch, wandering through Golden Gate Park in rare San Francisco sunshine. Sarah talked about her research, her plans for implementing AI in underserved communities, her vision for democratizing healthcare through technology. Brandon listened, contributed, challenged her assumptions, and let her challenge his. This was what he'd missed without knowing it: intellectual partnership, mutual respect, building something together instead of despite each other. I have something to ask you, Sarah said as they reached the Japanese tea garden. If it's about moving in together, I thought we agreed. Not that. Although we should revisit that conversation. She stopped walking, turning to face him. I've been offered a position. Chief Medical Officer for a new AI health startup. They want me to build their entire clinical framework. Sarah, that's incredible. Where? Albuquerque. Brandon's world tilted slightly. What? I know we said we'd take things slow, maintain our separate cities, see where this goes, but the opportunity is perfect, and... She paused, vulnerable in a way she rarely allowed. And I want to be where you are, if you'll have me. 2 years ago, Brandon would have panicked, would have seen traps where none existed, calculated betrayal probabilities, searched for hidden agendas. But therapy and time and Sarah's consistent honesty had rebuilt his capacity for trust. The startup, he said carefully. It wouldn't happen to be MedTech Innovations, would it? How did you... Her eyes widened. You're an investor. Guilty. Tom asked my opinion on CMO candidates last month. I may have strongly recommended they look at a certain brilliant doctor from Berkeley. Brandon Chen, did you manipulate this job offer? I provided a recommendation. What they did with it was their choice. He pulled her close. What you do with it is yours. Smooth, very smooth. She kissed him, soft and sure. So, can you handle me in your city? I survived Jacqueline. I can handle anything. Never compare me to your ex-wife again. Deal. They flew back to Albuquerque together 3 days later. Sarah spent the flight reading MedTech's business plan while Brandon pretended to work, but actually watched her concentrate, memorizing the way she bit her lip when thinking. At the ranch, Cisco greeted them with typical horse indifference. Sarah had learned to ride over her visits, though she preferred hiking to horses. They walked the property as sunset approached, planning where she might stable her own horse if she wanted one, discussing the commute to MedTech's offices. This is really happening, she said, a note of wonder in her voice. Second thoughts? No, just, I never thought I'd leave California, never thought I'd follow someone to a new city. She looked at him. Never thought I'd trust someone enough to try. Funny. I was thinking the same thing. That evening, Brandon cooked while Sarah unpacked the belongings she'd brought. Simple domesticity, but it felt revolutionary. Someone else's clothes in his closet, someone else's coffee mug in his kitchen, someone else's presence filling spaces that had been empty too long. I need to tell you something, he said over dinner. Sarah set down her wine. That sounds ominous. Not ominous, just necessary. He pulled out a small box, weathered with age. This was my grandmother's. I've been carrying it around for months, trying to figure out the right time. Brandon, I'm not proposing. Not yet. We agreed on slow, and I'm honoring that. He opened the box, revealing the simple gold band with its modest diamond. But I want you to know it's here, that I'm thinking about it, that when we're ready, this is waiting. Sarah studied the ring, then him, then the ring again. Your grandmother's? She wore it for 60 years, raised 5 kids, built a life, loved my grandfather through war and peace and everything between. He closed the box. Jacqueline said it was too simple. I think it's perfect. I think you're perfect. Clearly you need your eyes checked, doctor. She laughed, and they finished dinner talking about everything except the ring. But Brandon noticed her glancing at where he'd put the box, saw the small smile that kept surfacing. Later, as they sat on the portal watching stars emerge over the desert, Sarah asked, Do you ever hear from her? Jacqueline? No. Last I heard she was still in Phoenix, still working at the car rental place. And Christian? 3 more years on his sentence. His daughter reached out last year, wanted to understand what happened. We had coffee. She's at Stanford now, studying law to help people like her mother. That's good. That something positive came from it. Something positive came for me too, Brandon said, pulling her closer. I learned what love isn't, which taught me what it is. And what is it? It's trust. It's building something together. It's choosing each other every day, not just when it's easy. He kissed her temple. It's debugging problems together instead of creating them. You're doing the code metaphor thing again. You love the code metaphor thing. I love you. The words hung in the desert air, 3 months later than some might expect, exactly when they both meant them. I love you too, Brandon said. No conditions, no exceptions, no hidden subroutines. Now that's romantic. They stayed on the portal until the desert cold drove them inside, planning Sarah's move, their future, the life they'd build with careful trust and tested faith. 6 months later, Brandon proposed at Kashakatue Tent Rocks, where ancient volcanic eruptions had created something beautiful from destruction. Sarah said yes before he finished asking, the simple ring perfect on her surgeon's hand. They married the following spring in the ranch's cottonwood grove, surrounded by friends who'd weathered the storm with Brandon and new ones who knew him only as the man who'd chosen transparency over comfortable lies. Lucas was best man, Emily, the unofficial wedding coordinator. Miguel Torres attended with his new investor one of Brandon's recommendations who'd offered fair terms. Even Roberto and Carmen Martinez came, having long since forgiven Brandon for the necessary cruelty of exposing their daughter. To second chances, Lucas toasted at the reception, and the wisdom to recognize them. To trust, Sarah added, and the courage to offer it again. As they danced under New Mexico stars, Brandon thought about the journey from that awful night when trust died to this perfect one where it lived again. The scar tissue remained, would always remain, but it had become proof of healing rather than evidence of wounds. "What are you thinking?" Sarah asked, swaying in his arms. "That Christian sent a letter last week, from prison, asking for forgiveness. And I fed it to the shredder, like all the others. Good. Some forgiveness has to be earned. And some people aren't worth the energy of anger anymore. Look at you, all evolved and healthy." "I had a good debugger," he said, spinning her as the band played on. Later, much later, when the guests had gone and they sat on the portal in wedding clothes and bare feet, Sarah asked, "Any regrets?" Brandon considered the question, thinking of all the paths that had led here. The betrayal, the revenge, the public destruction of 2 lives, the painful rebuilding of his own. "No," he said finally. "Every bug in the code led to this program running. I wouldn't change a line. Even the painful parts? Especially those. They taught me to recognize the real thing when it arrived." He kissed his wife, the word still new and wonderful. "They taught me that love isn't possession or performance. It's partnership." "Partnership," Sarah agreed, with really good error handling. "Now who's making code metaphors? You're contagious." They laughed and talked and planned and trusted. In the distance, coyotes called to each other across the bosque, wild and free and unashamed of their nature, like Brandon had learned to be, like Sarah had taught him to remain. The moon rose over the Sandias, full and bright, illuminating a future debugged of lies and rebuilt on truth. It wasn't the life Brandon had planned when he'd proposed to Jacqueline in a hot air balloon a lifetime ago. It was infinitely better, because this time he'd chosen a partner, not a performance. This time trust went both directions. This time, love meant building something together that neither could corrupt alone. The code was clean, the system was stable, and the output was worth every error it had taken to get here.